Chapter 33. Chi was dumbfounded. In his opinion, even if the three people in front of him were the elites of the Yen Huang souls, he would think that the chubby middle-aged man was the most likely one. He did not expect Jida to say that this young man was a heavenly soul. The three people in front of him stood up from where they were sitting. The young man who looked like a hooligan extended his hand to Chiyu. "Hello, I'm a heavenly soul." His voice was very deep, and it gave off an oppressive feeling that did not match his appearance. Chiyu was sizing them up, and they were also sizing up Chiyu. After the two of them shook hands, the heavenly soul's eyes revealed an indifferent light. "Little brother, you must be suspicious of my appearance. This is to hide my identity, and I have no choice. Come, sit down. There's still some time before boarding. Let's talk." Chiyu sat down beside the three of them. Jida then continued to introduce. "This beautiful lady is a plant soul, and this chubby one is a computer soul." There was a word in his mouth. This was how Chiyu felt now. That fatso with a big head and intestines was actually a computer soul? Looking at his chubby hands, it was hard to imagine what it looked like when he typed on the keyboard. It seemed that one really could not judge a book by its cover. The computer soul smiled at Chiyu. "Hello. I've heard Jida mention your name a long time ago. I didn't expect you to be so young and promising. It's really rare. Speaking of which, I've always been very curious about the Guardian of the East. If there's a chance, let's get to know each other better." Fatso's chubby face trembled slightly as he smiled. It was easy to give people a sense of closeness. The plant soul was silent, which did not match its age. It sat at the side without saying a word, as if it had not heard anything. Chiyu turned to look at the heavenly soul. "Brother heavenly soul is about the same age as me. You're much more capable than me. Don't listen to Jida's boasting. I actually don't have any abilities." He was speaking the truth, but the three souls heard it as modesty. The heavenly soul smiled and said, "Brother Chi, it's just that I look young in my outfit that you misunderstood me. In fact, I'm already 35 years old this year. I've heard the boss speak highly of you. You're definitely young and promising." Chiyu gaped at Tianhun. He had never imagined that the young man in front of him was already 35 years old. "Boss, who's the boss?" Jida winked at Chiyu, chuckled, and said, "Master, what do you think?" Chiyu's heart jolted, and he immediately understood. The boss that Tianhun mentioned was probably Jida's father, General Ji. Tianhun smiled and said, "Since we're all on the same side, and Brothers Chi is here to help us complete the mission, let me give Brothers Chi a brief introduction to the structure of our yellow flame soul. In the Yen Huang soul sect, there was no hierarchy. Everyone was brothers and sisters. Among them, Tian, Di, Xian, and Huang were the captains. I'll be in charge of the mission this time. We've already received detailed information from the Sun Nation. It won't be easy to rescue Professor Guanping. Professor Guanping is now under strict surveillance, and we've lost contact with him. We don't know how the situation has developed. This mission is dangerous, and it's our first time working together. If there's any danger, Brothers Chi must protect yourself first." Chiyu thought to himself, "I'll protect myself even if you don't want me to. After all, my life is more important." However, up until now, he did not think that this mission would be difficult. If rescuing the professor was really difficult, would the Yellow Flame Soul sect only send for people? Chiyu did not know that as the most elite and mysterious special organization in the Yen Huang Republic, the strength of the Yellow Flame Soul sect was far beyond his imagination. "I'll try my best. Brother Tian'an, how long will it take for us to return from the Sun Nation?" Although what happened at Qingbei University had somewhat disheartened him, he did not forget the gathering at Tianxiang Mountain 2 months later at Gui Jianshou. As he continued to cultivate the ascending Qilin technique, Chiyu's sense of responsibility had imperceptibly increased a lot. Tianhun muttered, "That's hard to say." The mission was completed smoothly. Perhaps we'll be able to return in 10 days. If things don't go smoothly, we might even be delayed for several months. Luck is very important. Chiyu nodded, but did not say anything else. His eyes inadvertently swept across the little girl who was called a plant soul and could not help but reveal a trace of curiosity in his eyes. Tianhun smiled and said, "Plant souls are born without sound, so she can't converse with you. Please don't take it to heart." Chi Yu was shocked. He looked at the plant soul in a different light. Such a cute little girl was actually a mute. God was so unfair. He unconsciously revealed a trace of pity. How can I take it to heart? The plant soul's sister is so pitiful. Regardless of whether it was Jida, Tianhun, or the computer soul, their expressions could not help but become a little strange. They looked at Chi Yu as if they were looking at a Martian. The plant soul's gaze met Chi Yu's pitiful gaze and was slightly stunned. Very quickly, she lowered her head. At this moment, an announcement sounded. Flight DH-6892 to the Sun Nation has arrived. Passengers, please prepare to board. Tianhun stood up and patted Chi Yu's shoulder. Let's go. We're about to board the plane. We should try to talk as little as possible in front of outsiders. This communication device is for you. As long as you're on Earth, we'll be able to locate you at any time. As he spoke, Tianhun handed Chi Yu a platinum ring that looked like a general escape. Chi Yu tried it on. The ring fitted perfectly on his left pinky finger. The five of them followed the crowd and walked toward the boarding area. They weren't in first class or economy class, but business class, which was in between. The five of them were spread out. Chi Yu and Jida sat together, while the other three souls sat in different corners. Because it was an international flight, the plane this time was obviously much more luxurious than the one Chi Yu had taken last time. Half an hour later, with a strong push, the large passenger plane took off and rushed into the blue sky with a slight vibration. Chi Yu sat by the window, watching as the capital grew smaller beneath his feet. His body began to tremble. This acrophobia was not something that could be cured in a short time. In the morning, because of his hangover, his mind was still a little fuzzy, so he casually agreed to go to the Sun Nation with Jida. Now, he was beginning to regret it, and the expression on his face began to change. Jida looked curiously at Chi Yu and said, "Master, what's wrong with you? Are you still not feeling well after drinking yesterday?" Chi Yu shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I'm afraid of heights." Jida was stunned at first. Then he held back his laughter and said, "Oh, I see." Chi Yu said unhappily, "Why? Is it embarrassing to be afraid of heights? Don't laugh at me." Jida hurriedly said, "Why would I? You're my master. I won't laugh at you. As a strong person, there will always be some flaws. This world is fair." Chi Yu was speechless. To be precise, as the plane rose in altitude, he was already unable to speak. His body began to tremble uncontrollably, and his face became paler and paler. Cold sweat began to flow down his temples. Only then did Jida realize that Chi Yu was actually afraid of heights. "Master, do you want me to help you?" Chi Yu said reluctantly. "How?" Last time on the plane, there was Ming Ming, and under the influence of his lust, Chi Yu was greatly distracted. But now he wasn't so lucky. He couldn't ask to remember to exchange seats with the plant soul. Although Chi Yu liked beautiful women, he only felt pity and sympathy for the plant soul that had lost its voice since childhood. Jida chuckled and said, "It's very simple. I'll just knock you out. If you don't feel anything, you naturally won't be afraid of heights." Chi Yu gave Jida a middle finger, F***CK, with that hand of yours. "If I don't grasp it well, won't I be beaten to death by you? I'll just bear with it." As he said that, he had already closed his eyes and placed his head on the seat in front of him. He tried his best to concentrate and slowly circulated the thundercloud force in his body, maintaining silence. During this period of time, because he had been working hard to cultivate, Chi Yu's progress was very obvious. The water attribute thundercloud force had entered the one cloud realm because of the accident in the sea last time. The fire attribute thundercloud force and the wind attribute thundercloud force were also improving very quickly. They were not far from the one cloud realm. With Kieran's real cultivation method, Chi Yu's progress was much faster than he had imagined. When he was cultivating, whenever he felt lonely, he would think about how he would be able to act like a pig to eat a tiger after he became stronger and scare Hai Ruyue. He would immediately feel very good, and the feeling of loneliness would naturally disappear. Among the 4 attributes of thundercloud force, the only one that gave Chi Yu a headache was the lightning attribute thundercloud force. His cultivation was to restrain his body's aura from the outside world and use his own thundercloud force to absorb various attribute energy molecules in the air. Other than the thunderstorm weather, there were very few lightning attribute molecules in the air, so the progress of cultivation was much slower. In order to cultivate the lightning attribute thundercloud force, he even wanted to touch the electric door, but when he thought that he might be electrocuted into an idiot, he had to give up. Therefore, the lightning attribute thundercloud force was the slowest to improve. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to upgrade the 4 attributes of thundercloud force at the same time to continue to improve, he had even planned to give up the cultivation of thundercloud force. With the continuous operation of the thundercloud force, Chi-Yu's heart gradually calmed down. The thundercloud force combined with nature and constantly improved Chi-Yu's body during the operation. The essence of heaven and earth restored the discomfort he felt last night because of drinking and gradually made him produce a full power of thundercloud force. Looking at the 4 colors of light running in his body, Chi-Yu's heart entered an ethereal state, which made him feel much more comfortable, and he temporarily forgot the fact that he was high in the sky. After an unknown amount of time, Chi-Yu, who was cultivating, suddenly felt that there were changes in the outside world. In self-protection, after completing a cloud cycle of cultivation, he woke up from his half-asleep state. As soon as he woke up, he found that the plane was slightly trembling, and his heartbeat suddenly accelerated. He looked at Jida, who was beside him as if nothing had happened, and said, "What's wrong? Why is the plane shaking?" Jida said, "Master, wake up. It's okay. It should be a natural phenomenon that occurs through the thunderstorm clouds. Just go through the clouds, and everything will be fine. If you're not feeling well, continue to sleep. I'll let you know." Chi-Yu's heart, which had finally calmed down, could not help but become anxious again because of the plane shaking. He opened the small window beside him and looked out. With this look, he could not help but feel an intense fear of heights. It was daytime for Ming Ming, but it was actually dark outside the window. Wuji could only see the situation around the plane. The most frightening thing was that there was actually a faint flash of lightning in the dark clouds. The lightning element in the air was obviously many times stronger than usual. The plane flew through the dark clouds, and the shaking gradually became more and more intense. Attention, dear passengers. Attention, dear passengers. Due to the sudden appearance of the dark clouds, please fasten your seatbelts and prepare to use oxygen masks to breathe. The plane will temporarily shut down all entertainment systems. It will be restored after flying out of the clouds. Do not worry, this is normal. The voice of the broadcast sounded very pleasant, and it was repeated in English and Sun language. Hearing this, Chi-Yu let out a long breath, and the worry in his heart was slightly relieved. Jida frowned and muttered to himself in a low voice, "It's actually so serious. How can it be? Did the plane not receive the weather forecast before taking off?" Chi-Yu was stunned and said, "What's serious? Didn't they say it's fine?" At this moment, the plane had already darkened, and all the lights were naturally turned off, plunging the plane into darkness. Jida said, "Master, this is just the flight attendants comforting the passengers in the plane to prevent a riot. Turning off the power and entertainment systems in the cabin is only done under special circumstances. It seems that the clouds outside have already greatly affected the plane. How unlucky. Master, if anything happens later, you must stay by my side." Hearing Jida's words, Chi-Yu's heart, which had just calmed down, immediately tensed up again. F*CK. I haven't even implemented my plan to woo beauties, and I don't even have a wife. I won't die before I succeed, right? Jida smiled bitterly and said, "Master, no one could have thought of this. Of all the means of transportation, planes should be the safest. No one could have thought that something like this would happen. Don't worry. Even if there really is danger, we have emergency measures. With Big Brother Tianhun here, nothing will happen." How could Chi-Yu be at ease? Because of his natural fear of heights, his emotions were already very chaotic. The plane's vibration was getting stronger and stronger. Through the small window, Chi-Yu saw the lightning outside the window and the clouds flying past the plane several times. Every time, the plane would shake violently. He really didn't dare to imagine what would happen if the lightning struck the plane. Just as Chi Yu was panicking, his body suddenly reacted. The thundercloud force, which had always been quiet during his usual cultivation, suddenly became restless. Chi Yu didn't try to control it, but it operated on its own. At the same time, the Kirin bead on Chi Yu's chest also began to heat up, and waves of numbness were constantly transmitted from the Kirin bead to Chi Yu's body. Chi Yu's mind suddenly lit up, right? It was obviously the best time to cultivate his lightning attribute cloud power in this situation. Furthermore, the lightning attribute cloud power had the ability to absorb the lightning particles between heaven and earth. If he could absorb all the lightning outside, wouldn't he be able to get out of this dangerous situation? Due to his nervousness, he didn't think about it carefully. As soon as he found a possibility to solve the trouble in front of him, he immediately acted. In the darkness, Jita faintly saw a purple light flash in Chi Yu's eyes. Then, a huge energy magnetic field suddenly appeared around his body. This sudden change gave Jita a fright. He hurriedly reached out to pull Chi Yu, but the moment his hand touched Chi Yu's body, an intense numbness instantly spread through his body, causing his hand to bounce away. If not for Jita's seatbelt, the sudden bouncing force would have sent his entire body flying out of the car. Even so, half of his body was completely paralyzed. Chi Yu was extremely bold. Not only did he not restrict the operation of the thundercloud force in his body, but he concentrated all his thoughts on the lightning force and pushed it with all his strength. The other three attributes of the thundercloud force were controlled by him and disappeared into his dantian. Only the purple thundercloud force of the thunder attribute rotated wildly around the light pulse. The most fundamental fusion traction ability of Kirin's bloodline was naturally activated. At the same time, he released his breath and unscrupulously attracted the lightning molecules in the outside world. With his body as the center, he introduced these lightning molecules directly into his body. "Don't!" Xieji's scream just sounded in Chi Yu's body, and it was instantly drowned by the unimaginable lightning energy molecules. If the thundercloud force in Chi Yu's body was originally a stream, then the thundercloud force had now become a big river. Chi was too reckless. Before he acted, he did not think about how powerful the lightning in the air was. Although most of the lightning was only produced by the friction of the clouds, the lightning molecules produced in that instant were extremely terrifying. Not to mention him, even the real 9-cloud Kirin, as long as he was not of the thunder attribute, he would not compete with such power. The cabin suddenly lit up and was filled with an intense purple light. The purple light brought with it snake-shaped lightning that revolved around every corner of the cabin. If there were people outside the plane now, they would be horrified to see that in this vast dark cloud, all the lightning rays were rushing towards the plane like crazy. For a time, the plane became the center of the entire dark cloud. Of course, it was the center of the lightning. Not only had the cabin changed, but the outside of the cabin had also turned purple. The huge roar of thunder and lightning sounded continuously, and each tremor seemed to tear the plane apart. When Chi Yu's body had just opened to absorb the lightning, there were already changes. When the unimaginably huge thunder and lightning surged into his body, almost everyone on the plane, including the flight attendants, fainted amid the flashing electric light. Perhaps it was because he was in the eye of the lightning, but Chi Yu's mind was still clear. However, he realized that his body was no longer under his control. That huge amount of lightning-attributed molecules had already filled every single one of his cells. The Kirin bead in front of his chest had become the gathering place of these huge thunder and lightning forces. Thinking of Xie Zhi's last word, Chi Yu suddenly woke up. "Oh my God, what did I do?" I actually wanted to directly absorb the lightning in the clouds. He felt the electricity that was constantly passing through his body. He had already understood that if it were not for the Kirin bead on his body would have turned into charcoal. No, it should be said that the entire plane would have turned into charcoal. However, although the Kirin bead was one of the 8 artifacts of the Kirin clan, it had a limit. Ancestor Kirin, who created this Kirin bead, was also a four-cloud Kirin. He did not specialize in thunder and lightning, and the Kirin bead that he left behind was definitely limited in the storage of thunder element energy molecules. What would happen if the influx of thunder and lightning reached its limit? Am I committing suicide? Chiyu's body was completely numb, and he could not feel anything. His surroundings were completely covered in purple. At this time, in the face of the power of nature, not to mention him, only 2 out of the 4 experts of the Yellow Flame Soul were still conscious. One of them was the Heavenly Soul. At that moment, the Heavenly Soul's entire body was emitting a faint layer of white light. The surrounding lightning quickly slid past the edge of the white light and could not directly stimulate his body. However, under the strong pressure brought by the thunder and lightning, he could only maintain this state. On the other side, the other one who was still conscious was the plant soul. In the darkness, no one could see that the skin of the plant soul had turned dark green, and there was a faint green light in its eyes. Some plants in nature were naturally insulated from electricity. As a plant soul, it had obviously mastered the secret. Unfortunately, regardless of whether it was the Heavenly Soul or the plant soul, they could only barely protect themselves. They did not understand what exactly had happened on the plane. Now, the altitude of the plane was continuously descending, but the surrounding thunder and lightning had no intention of letting go of the plane. If it were not for the layer of purple light surrounding the plane, the entire plane would have turned into charcoal. Chiyu's body was completely stiff. The relic bead on his wrist emitted a gentle stream of air that flowed directly into the depths of his lungs, protecting his internal organs from being injured by the power of the thunder and lightning. However, this could only last for a while. As he could not control his body, even if he wanted to use the Kirin Red, he could not do so. Furthermore, the energy of the Kirin Red was fire. Its influence on the thunder and lightning was negligible, and it might not be able to defend against it. The purple lightning continued to surge, and the image of the Kirin on Chiyu's body had completely turned purple. Even the black and silver horn was dyed with a layer of purple light. Meanwhile, the Kirin bead in front of his chest had started to tremble continuously. The power of the thunder and lightning that surged into his body was too fast. Not only was he digesting it, he was also reaching his limit in terms of storing it. The Kirin bead was an energy molecule with an amplification attribute. The artifact that increased the speed of Kirin's cultivation was not an artifact that stored energy. If it were not for the fact that the ancestor of Kirin who had created it was extremely powerful, the Kirin bead would have been damaged by the extreme thunder and lightning. It was now completely one with Chiyu. Thus, it was equivalent to replacing Chiyu to absorb the massive thunder and lightning that had suddenly appeared. If it was another divine beast, a ferocious beast, or a Zodiac guardian, none of them would be able to do what Chiyu was doing. One of the reasons why Kirin's cultivation speed was fast was that his speed of absorbing energy molecules from the outside world was far faster than other ancient giant beasts. Only Kirin could directly guide and absorb the energy molecules in the air. Ordinary ancient giant beasts needed a long time to transform after absorbing the essence of heaven and earth. However, after Kirin absorbed it, he only needed a simple process of convergence to directly turn it into his own energy. This was also the reason why Kirin could become the king of the divine beasts. Chiyu was not Kirin. However, he had inherited the purest Kirin's bloodline. His current strength could not be compared to the ancient Kirin at all. However, the absorption ability of Kirin's bloodline existed. Normally, even if he wanted to, he would not be able to absorb such a huge amount of energy molecules at once. However, the situation this time was extremely special. He suddenly activated his Kirin's bloodline according to the cultivation method of the ascending Qilin technique. All of a sudden, his body became the center point, and the thundercloud force in his body became the source of attracting the lightning in the sky. 2 weeks ago, when he was in the sea, there was a situation where the water thundercloud force accelerated the absorption. The reason why the water element energy molecules fluctuated so strongly at that time was mainly because of the appearance of the 9 deep-sea nether snakes. However, water was a kind of gentle energy molecule. It was completely different from the lightning element. Although its fluctuation was strong, it was not destructive. Among all kinds of energy, lightning could be said to be the most violent one. The electric charge produced by lightning itself had a strong attraction force. Therefore, the scene that happened before him suddenly appeared in a special situation. Chi was right. If it was not for Kieran's bead, he would have been dead the moment the huge amount of lightning force surged into his body. Not only that, but the entire plane would also be destroyed. Kieran's bead temporarily became a special carrier for his body. Under such a special situation, Kieran's artifact, which had the soul and bloodline of its ancestor, automatically protected its master. It absorbed a large amount of lightning energy that Chi Yu could not withstand, which allowed Chi Yu to survive temporarily. However, this was not enough to solve the crisis before him. The weather forecast did not predict the thunderstorm this time, which was a huge mistake and also a bug in technology. This storm was formed by the combination of several warm and humid air currents. Originally, these air currents would not have met. However, a gust of cold air suddenly blew in from the west. Under the stimulation of the cold air, the weak air currents changed directions at the same time, deviating from their original trajectories and meeting in the air. Under the constant stimulation of the cold and warm air, coupled with the condensation of water vapor in the air, the dark clouds and lightning that Chi Yu's flight encountered were formed at an extremely fast speed. It could be said that this was a perfect thunderstorm. Although there was no wind, the intensity of the lightning was unprecedented on Earth for decades. Therefore, Chi Yu's suicidal behavior seemed even more ridiculous. The lightning energy brought about by a perfect thunderstorm could not be calculated with numbers. When Chi Yu's plane passed by, the perfect thunderstorm had just formed, and the lightning energy was not too strong. Therefore, the plane did not change its flight path and continued to move forward on autopilot. When the flight crew realized that something was wrong, the plane had completely fallen into the perfect thunderstorm and could not extricate itself. The Kieran's bead trembled more and more violently, and the entire bead had completely turned into a terrifying purple color, with lightning constantly flashing around it. That incomparably huge power of thunder and lightning attacked its endurance again and again. Chi did not give up. He endured the discomfort in his body, and with the help of the gentle energy emitted by the relic bead, he tried his best to use his mind to control the other 3 types of thundercloud force in his body to dissolve and absorb the incomparably huge lightning energy molecules. He knew very well that only by sharing the lightning energy with the Kieran bead as much as possible could he have hope of survival. Unfortunately, after all, Chi Yu was only the successor of Kieran, who had not even reached the first cloud. How much could his body absorb? As the load continued to increase, blood oozed out of his 7 orifices at the same time, and the lightning energy stimulated every cell in his body again and again. The plane could no longer be controlled by humans. It trembled violently in the air, but because of the traction and suction of the lightning, the speed of the fall was not fast. However, the purple lightning could destroy the entire plane at any time. Chi Yu was no longer in control of his own fate, but the entire plane. Chi Yu, I'm going to kill you. An extremely angry voice sounded from the depths of Chi Yu's heart. Chi Yu was stunned at first, and then he reacted. This voice did not come from Xie, but the 9-headed deep-sea nether snake that he had taken into his body with the life incantation. Chi Yu said with some self-mockery, "Haven't you been looking forward to this moment for a long time? If I die, you will naturally be free. Don't worry, I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on for long. I'm so pitiful." The deep-sea nether snake repeated what it said to Chi Yu for the first time. "Why am I always the one who gets hurt? After I met you, I was already unlucky enough, and now I was brought to the edge of the cliff by you." Although the deep-sea nether snake only had 1/10 of its strength after leaving the sea, it was still an ancient beast that had cultivated for 9,900 years. It was by no means comparable to Xie. The energy of its origin was much stronger than that of Siege. Therefore, even under such a huge pressure of lightning, it could still communicate with Chiyu. Chiyu was a little surprised and said, "What did you say? Aren't you looking forward to my death?" "Nonsense, of course I look forward to your death, but even if you die, you can't drag me down with you. Do you think that in this situation, if you die, I can still live?" When the deep-sea nether snake said this, it seemed even more angry. Chapter 34. The deep-sea nether snake whimpered, "I am so pitiful. Who did I provoke? Chiyu, you are really my nemesis. I accept my fate. You must treat me better in the future. Otherwise, I will not let you go even if I become a snake ghost." Just when Chiyu did not understand what the deep-sea nether snake meant, a cool energy suddenly diffused from his body. This was a very pure energy. The faint energy molecules began to spread from his internal organs, directly stimulating the cells in his body that had been lightly paralyzed by thunder and lightning. The originally silent water thundercloud force suddenly became stronger under the stimulation of this cool airflow. The faint blue thundercloud force slowly spread in the meridians in his body. The cool airflow was not strong, but it was endless as if there was no end. It was like a surging river returning to the sea. Under the soft effect of the water thundercloud force, the discomfort in his body suddenly weakened a lot. Although the influx of thunder and lightning energy outside his body did not slow down, both Chiyu's body and the Kirin bead were temporarily buffered. After being stunned for a while, Chiyu suddenly understood that this was the deep-sea nether snake helping him. Although it was not his intention, at this time, it was undoubtedly a timely act. His original bad impression of the deep-sea nether snake suddenly weakened a lot. As Chiyu said, he, Siege, and the deep-sea nether snake were now grasshoppers on a rope. Although the deep-sea nether snake had an extremely tenacious vitality, in this situation of thunder and lightning, once Chiyu's body was destroyed and the Kirin bead exploded, it would definitely not be able to survive with only 1/10 of its power. In order to save his own life, he had no other choice. He could only do his best to help Chiyu get through this difficult situation. With the help of the constant cool airflow, the gentle water thundercloud force flowed all over Chiyu's body. The thundercloud force kept spreading in the water thundercloud force. Due to the increase of the area and the cooperation of the water thundercloud force, Chiyu's absorption of these lightning energy molecules became several times faster. However, this was not enough for him to withstand the intense stimulation of the lightning outside. After a brief moment of relaxation, the Kirin orb began to tremble more intensely. Moreover, this time it was much more intense than before. Without even looking, Chiyu knew that the Kirin orb was on the verge of destruction. At this moment, Chiyu suddenly saw the meridians in his body suddenly light up. It was not illuminated by the purple lightning, but by a ball of blue light. He was surprised to find that it was a blue light orb. The orb looked very transparent, and there was a faint blue light flowing in it like rippling water. As soon as the lightning energy in his body came into contact with the blue orb, it immediately changed its direction and gave up on the Kirin orb. Instead, it surged towards the blue light orb. Water was the medium of electricity. As long as it was not pure water, it would conduct electricity. Moreover, as soon as the blue orb appeared, it naturally produced a strong suction force. Just like how Chiyu absorbed the lightning energy molecules in the beginning, it quickly absorbed the external lightning energy. Without the continuous thunder and lightning, the Kirin orb immediately calmed down. Even Chiyu's body was completely relaxed. The numbness in his body had not completely disappeared, but the feeling of approaching death had left him. The blue orb that had appeared did not move. It just quietly floated in Chiyu's dantian, layers of faint blue light emitting outwards. As the lightning continued to flow into it, the blue orb began to change into a purple color. However, this seemingly very small light orb was like a vast sea. No matter how large the lightning energy was, it did not hesitate to absorb it into its body. Chi did not know what this orb was. In his opinion, it might be a magic weapon of the deep-sea nether snake. However, He did not know that although this blue light orb did not look very eye-catching, it represented the cultivation of the deep-sea nether snake for thousands of years. All living creatures, such as dragons, snakes, turtles, and so on, could produce orbs. The deep-sea nether snake naturally produced a snake orb. As the strongest ancient beast in the sea, every time it cultivated for 1,000 years, the essence of the sun and moon that it obtained would condense into a blue sea god orb. It was filled with the crystallization of its cultivation and hard work over the past 1,000 years. It was also the source of the deep-sea nether snake's energy. 1,000 years of cultivation was nothing to scoff at. Even though it was still inferior to the Chilan bead in terms of effectiveness, it was still an extremely precious item for the deep-sea nether snake. This blue sea god orb was also known as the snake spirit orb. Once it cultivated for 10,000 years and collected 10 snake spirit orbs, it could evolve into a heavenly orb. At that time, the deep-sea nether snake could enter the realm of transcendence and would no longer be bound by the sea. In order to save its life, the deep-sea nether snake had to release its most precious blue sea god orb to help Chi-Yu absorb the lightning at the critical moment. The deep-sea nether snake was of the water attribute. Once its blue sea god orb absorbed the lightning energy, it could no longer be used by it. It was so reluctant to give up its 1,000 years of cultivation. However, under the current circumstances, it could only endure it for the sake of its life. If it was just a small thunderstorm, it could naturally absorb the huge energy accumulated by the blue sea god orb easily. Unfortunately, this time, Chi-Yu's bold behavior attracted a perfect thunderstorm. The blue sea god orb itself stored a large amount of the essence of the water attribute energy. It was not a container. Therefore, although the deep-sea nether snake's 1,000 years of cultivation was very powerful, the lightning energy molecules it could absorb were limited, just like the Kirin orb. However, when the blue orb turned from blue to purple and the lightning surrounded it, the deep-sea nether snake could not help but let out a scream. Another blue light appeared in Chi-Yu's dantian, continuing the previous work of the blue sea god orb. With the help of the blue sea god orb, Chi-Yu could not help but be overjoyed. He hurriedly restrained his mind and cultivated his thundercloud force according to the ascending Chilan skill. He was definitely being kind. After all, only by absorbing more lightning energy molecules could he relieve some of the pressure on the deep-sea nether snake. However, the cultivation of the ascending Chilan skill was a very mysterious process. The cultivation started from the dantian. When Chi-Yu just started to operate his thundercloud force, the blue sea god orb that had absorbed a large number of lightning energy molecules was sucked into his meridians with a whoosh. It was wrapped by the thundercloud force and flowed along his meridians. It was completely out of the control of the deep-sea nether snake. The deep-sea nether snake was naturally very reluctant to give up his treasure, but he also knew that the blue sea god orb that was full of lightning energy molecules was no longer under his control. Seeing that his 1,000-year cultivation was wrapped by Chi-Yu's thundercloud force and entered his meridians, he could not help but feel a great pain in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. The perfect storm had reached its peak at this time. Purple electric snakes blasted into the plane again and again. Due to the crazy influx of a large amount of electric energy, all the systems of the plane had completely failed. Chi-Yu sat in his seat, and his body was constantly alternating between blue and purple brilliance. Because the blue sea god orb was absorbing the lightning energy molecules, Chi-Yu no longer felt uncomfortable. Therefore, it did not take long for him to enter his usual cultivation state. The thundercloud force continued to flow according to the ascending Chilan skill. Each cloud circle would absorb some lightning energy molecules and turn them into the thundercloud force that Chi-Yu could control. The deep-sea nether snake's depression had reached its peak. His poor blue sea god orb had just absorbed enough lightning, but it would immediately be absorbed by the thundercloud force that Chi-Yu had completed a cloud circle. The blue sea god orb, which was a mixture of water and lightning attributes, immediately broke away from his control and became Chi-Yu's. The deep-sea nether snake was the most powerful, fierce beast in the sea. Although his body was filled with an evil aura, the serpent bead was the purest source of energy in his body. Not only did it not affect Chi-Yu at all, it even formed a natural string with the help of the lightning energy. As he cultivated, the violent lightning energy opened Chi-Yu's meridians. Then, with the gentle water thundercloud force, the meridians were stabilized and nourished. Chi-Yu, who was in the ethereal realm, did not know that with the help of the blue sea god, Orb, his current cultivation would have a great impact on his future achievements. The deep-sea nether snake felt wronged and pitiful as he counted in his heart. 2. F***CK, it can't be, and 3. I will F***CK again. No. Is there an end to this? What kind of cloud is this? Why is there so much lightning? There are already 7. I'm so pitiful. I have a last one. If it still doesn't work, I might as well let him die. Poor me. I lost my 9,000 years of cultivation just like that. The deep-sea nether serpent let out a miserable howl and finally fainted from a mental blow. Perhaps it was because of the Kirin's auspicious sign. When the 9th blue sea god, Orb, absorbed all the lightning and was taken away by Chi-Yu's thundercloud force, the plane had already fallen out of the dark clouds. More than 90% of the lightning in the dark clouds had been absorbed by the Kirin Orb and the 9 blue sea god orbs. When Chi-Yu's Kirin Orb suffered the last impact of the lightning, he immediately woke up from his cultivation state. When he opened his eyes, the cabin was still dark, but Chi-Yu found that everything in front of him was bright. Although there was no light, he was surprised to find that he could see every corner of the cabin clearly, even if there was a slight change in the texture. The trembling of the plane had become much weaker, and an indescribable huge energy was running naturally in his body. Chi-Yu concentrated on his body, only to find that the meridians in his body had completely changed. There was no change in the position of the meridians, but their volume was obviously several times larger than before. At least, that was what he felt when the thundercloud force passed through. If the energy flowing in the meridians was only the thickness of a hair before, it had now become the thickness of a little finger. The meridians, which had obviously become much wider, seemed empty. The 9 blue and purple light orbs were connected by the purple electric light, and they were revolving slowly along with his thundercloud force. His own water cloud power seemed to have unknowingly fused with this flow of energy. Compared to them, the wind and fire cloud powers were countless times smaller. Furthermore, the intensity of the energy was also far inferior. It was currently lying dormant in his dantian. What's going on? Could it be that he was already out of danger? At this moment, the surroundings suddenly lit up. It was not because there was electricity in the cabin, but because the light came from outside the plane. Chi looked out of the plane and was instantly scared out of his wits. He was shocked to find that the plane was gliding towards the ground. Although it was still very far from the ground, it seemed like it was about to crash. F***CK, you're not dead. A strange voice came from the other side of the cabin. There was a layer of white light, and a person stood up from his seat. Chi looked at him and realized that the person who had suddenly stood up was Heavenly Soul, who was dressed like a hooligan. Heavenly Soul's gaze was much dimmer, and his face was abnormally pale. The layer of white light around his body was very weak. He grabbed the back of the chair and looked in Wang Zhong's direction. When he saw that Wang Zhong was also looking at him, his gaze could not help but become strange. All of you wake up. His originally black eyes suddenly turned white, and a circle of white light spread out in all directions with an ice-cold aura. This white light seemed to be unstoppable by anything. It penetrated the chair and even the metal. In just a few seconds, it had already spread to every corner of the plane. Chi could not avoid being swept by the white light. He only felt his brain lighten, and not only did the dizziness caused by his fear of heights disappear, his mind became abnormally clear the moment the white light swept past him. His entire body seemed to have become comfortable. Although the energy in his body was not affected by the white light, this light of clarity caused his mind to be completely awakened. He broke free from his previous confusion. Heavenly Soul's lips moved slightly, and his words rang in Chi-Yu's ears. Let's not talk about what happened just now. You stay here. I'll go to the cockpit and ask the captain to try and restart the plane. The people here have already been swept by my light of clarity. As long as they're not dead, they will wake up very soon. Tell the mechanical soul, computer soul, and plant soul that once the plane is out of control, we will prepare to jump off. Jump? Hearing these two words, Chi-Yu's heartbeat quickened. Although he could already feel that his strength had increased a little, it did not cure his fear of heights. Heavenly Soul's figure flashed, and he was already in front of the plane. The moment he left, the entire plane was filled with groans. Jita rubbed his head and sat up straight. What's going on? My head hurts, and my entire body seems to be unable to exert any strength. Chi-Yu said in a low voice, Wake up! Wake up! The crisis is not over yet. We just rushed out of the dark clouds, and the plane is still out of control. Big Brother Tianhun said that once the plane is out of control, we should prepare to jump off. Hearing Chi-Yu's voice, Jita, who had been training since he was a child, immediately displayed the qualities of a soldier. He opened his eyes abruptly, nodded at Chi-Yu, and immediately unbuckled his seatbelt and leaped out. His target was the computer soul. Just as Chi-Yu was about to look for the plant soul and tell her the news, he saw the plant soul stand up from her seat and look at Chi-Yu with her big, clear eyes. There was a mysterious glint in her beautiful eyes, and she nodded at Chi-Yu as if she was hinting something. Chi-Yu was slightly stunned, and he gestured to the plant soul from afar, telling her to be prepared to jump off the plane. The plant soul showed a faint smile, which was rare for her, and nodded at him again before returning to her seat. At this time, the entire plane was filled with groans, and the passengers on the plane were gradually waking up. Although the lightning in the dark clouds was extremely strong, with Chi-Yu as the release point, these passengers were only knocked unconscious by the lightning and did not suffer any fatal injuries. However, the feeling of being electrocuted was not pleasant. Even so, their bodies had become very weak. Each of them sat in their seats, and they would not be able to fully wake up in a short period of time. Chi-Yu had already unbuckled his seatbelt. The light of sobriety that Tianhun had cast earlier gave him hope, although he did not know what would happen if he jumped off the plane. But since Tianhun had said so, he would not do anything meaningless. As long as he could live, everything was good. Chi-Yu, I will CK you. Just as Chi-Yu was worried, a weak voice sounded in his heart. This time, it was not the deep-sea nether snake who was scolding him. The weak voice came from Xieji. Brother Xieji, how are you? Chi-Yu asked tentatively. He also knew that he was too rash. Xieji said angrily, I won't die yet. You are too bold. Even the thunder attribute Kirin may not dare to do this. You actually used your strength, which is not even at Chu Yun, to absorb such a huge amount of lightning power. Are you going to destroy this plane? Ugh, I didn't mean it. I was hot-headed at the time, so... You could only explain it this way. Xieji smiled bitterly and said, Next time you are hot-headed, can you ask me first? Although we beasts and beasts have always been opposing each other, this time we really have the deep-sea nether snake. If it wasn't for it, I'm afraid we would all be smashed to pieces. Chi-Yu smiled and said, The meridians in my body seem to have expanded a lot. As long as I don't die this time, it can be considered a blessing in disguise. After a moment of silence, Xieji said in a very strange voice, I have seen shameless people, but I have never seen someone as shameless as you. Don't you understand how lucky you are this time? This time, it is 100 times more dangerous than the last time you used the life curse. You are not ashamed of it, but proud of it. If I still have a body, I really want to beat you up. I. Chi-Yu scratched his head with some embarrassment, and then said to Xieji in his heart, I also know the danger, but isn't it already over? Do I still have to be afraid for the rest of my life? Xieji smiled bitterly and said, You are an optimist. However, there's one thing you're right about. This time, you are indeed a blessing in disguise, and it is not an ordinary kind of luck. You should have felt the 9 light beads. If I guess correctly, it should be the blue sea beads that the deep-sea nether snake has cultivated for 9,000 years. Each bead has 1,000 years of his cultivation. How much benefit do you think you got? Chiyu said with some disbelief. No way. You mean I directly have the cultivation of the deep-sea nether snake for 9,000 years? Bullshit. How can it be so easy? Do you think the blue sea beads are eggs that can be digested easily? Not to mention you. Even if it was me, it would be impossible to digest any of them. Chiyu said, Okay, don't say anything. This time, the deep-sea nether snake saved my life. I will return the beads to him. Although I'm a gangster, and can be said to be a ruffian, I still know how to repay kindness. Xieji seemed to know Chiyu again. Do you really want to return it to him? Although you can't absorb these 9 blue sea beads now, their existence will be of great benefit to your future cultivation. Stop, don't go on. I'm not a gentleman. If the benefits you say are too tempting, I am afraid I will change my mind. Anyway, no matter what these 9 beads are used for, I will return them to the deep-sea nether snake. Chiyu interrupted Xie Ji's words. Although he also said that he wanted to return the blue sea beads to the deep-sea nether snake on impulse, he did not regret it. Instead, he felt very comfortable in his heart. Everything in front of him seemed to have become clear, and his guilt towards the deep-sea nether snake naturally disappeared. Chiyu, I admit it. The deep-sea nether snake finally woke up from its coma at this time. Its voice became weaker than Xie Ji's. The few words were short, but there was a touch of emotion. Brother Nether Snake, don't be angry. I will return all the beads to you. I won't take things that are not mine. Tell me, how can I return them to your body? Chiyu's generosity made Xie Ji speechless. The deep-sea nether snake whimpered. Return my ass. Do you think I don't want to get it back? If I had a way, I wouldn't let you suck it into your body. I'm a water attribute beast. Now my blue sea beads are full of overbearing power of thunder and lightning. If they return to my body and combine with my energy, I am afraid I will immediately turn into charcoal. These 9 blue sea beads should now be called blue sea thunder beads. The energy contained in them is so huge that it is almost unimaginable. Only a perverted 4-cloud Kirin like you can put in your body without being hurt. I want it back so badly. Chiyu was stunned for a moment. Then he couldn't help but laugh. This is the first time I have encountered something that I want to return but can't. Brother Xieji, do you have a way? Xieji said helplessly. Senior Nether Snake has lived for more than 9,000 years. His experience is much richer than mine. Even he can't do anything. What else can I do? It seems that this is the will of the heavens. However, don't think that these 9 blue sea thunder beads are really that precious. You have to be careful when you cultivate in the future. If you recklessly activate the energy within them, you'll be severely injured. If you rashly activate the energy in it, as long as one of the beads explodes, then you will die. I am afraid that the power of it is several times greater than that of a nuclear bomb. Chiyu took a deep breath and said, What about me? Are these 9 beads just for showing my body? Xieji said, That is not the case. Right now, these 9 blue sea thunder pearls contain lightning and water energy. Every time your cloud energy increases by 1 level, the blue sea thunder pearls will increase by 1 level. Whenever your thundercloud force increases by 1 level, you can use the vacuum in your meridians to absorb some of the energy in the blue sea thunder beads. In other words, in the future, you only need to practice the 2 types of thundercloud force, fire and wind. Once these 2 types of thundercloud force reach the initial cloud realm, then you can immediately upgrade the thunder and water thundercloud force to the 2 cloud realm. In the future, you only need to be proficient in the use of thunder and water energy, and there is no need to practice specifically. In this way, your cultivation time as a 4-cloud Kirin can be reduced by half. However, as for how many clouds to completely absorb the energy of the blue sea thunder beads, I don't know. The energy involved is incalculable. Haha, it is really a blessing in disguise. A good character, everything is good. You're really stupid, Xieji and Deep Sea Nether Snake said in disdain in unison. 2 is 2. Anyway, I have a good character. Chiyu was full of excitement. To be able to reduce the cultivation time by half was simply wonderful for him. Xieji said, We are all very weak and have to enter a state of deep sleep. When you are strong, don't forget to help Senior Nether Snake recover its strength. As the messenger of Kirin, once your strength reaches a certain level, you can help it recover some of its strength. Chiyu said, "Don't worry, I will. You guys go to sleep. Maybe I will have to jump out of the plane." At this moment, with a loud rumbling sound, the lights in the plane suddenly lit up. Chiyu was shocked at first, then he looked out of the window eagerly. The plane's original downward glide did not change, but it had changed from a downward glide to a horizontal glide. It seemed that the flight crew had regained control of the plane. Dear passengers, please pay attention. This is the captain of this plane. Please stay in your seats and do not move. I have good news for everyone. After passing through the clouds, the plane has returned to normal operations. All flight attendants return to their posts as soon as possible. The plane is operating normally, and we will continue to the destination of this trip, the capital of the Sun Nation. The voice of the broadcast echoed in everyone's ears like heavenly music. For a moment, the cabin was filled with cheers. Everyone shouted excitedly, and their emotions were somewhat out of control. When Jida returned to his seat, he saw Chiyu muttering to himself with a silly smile on his face. As long as you have a good character, everything is good. Jida speechlessly buckled his seatbelt, then laughed and said, "Master, why do I feel like I have a good character?" Chiyu glared at him and said, "You are my disciple. You can't fight with me." After saying this, the two of them could not help but laugh at each other. After all, being reborn after a disaster was definitely something worth being excited about. Tianhun quietly walked back from the front of the cabin. It could be seen that his eyes, which had returned to black, were also filled with joy. He gave Chiyu a look that said everything was normal, then immediately sat back in his seat. After a period of steady gliding, the plane rose again, and under the sunlight, it was once again in the blue sky and white clouds. Jida said, "Master, I can't take it anymore. My whole body is weak. I need to sleep for a while. You should rest for a while too. That was really dangerous. However, your current hairstyle is not bad. It can compete with Brother Tianhun." Chiyu was stunned and asked, "What hairstyle?" Jida smiled and said, "Touch your own hair." When Chiyu heard this, he hurriedly touched the top of his head. When he touched his hair, he could not help but feel embarrassed. His long hair, which originally hung down to his shoulders, was now standing up. If he had to describe his current hairstyle as an animal, it would definitely be a hedgehog. F***CKU. Previously, the lightning had stimulated every cell in his body, so his hair naturally reacted. It was no wonder that it became like this. Chiyu hurriedly used his hand to press his hair, but the lightning perm was not an ordinary effect, so it was impossible for him to do it in a short time. Jida snickered at the side, and Chiyu said unhappily, "What are you laughing at? Have you never seen someone different? I need to sleep." His hair was not listening to him, and Chiyu was afraid of heights. He did not dare to walk on the plane, so he could not go to the washroom to use water to calm his hair. He had no choice but to endure it. Because of the changes in his body, he was also very curious about his current state. He returned to his original position of lying on a chair in front of him, tried to restrain his Kirin aura, and began to cultivate again. This time, he did not completely immerse his mind into the thundercloud force in his body. Instead, he focused on sensing every minute change in the energy in his body. The 4 types of thundercloud force operated at the same time under Chiyu's control. The 9 blue sea thunder orbs attracted the water thundercloud force and thundercloud force to the surroundings. Compared to them, the wind thundercloud force and fire thundercloud force were obviously much weaker. Because the water thundercloud force had already reached the initial cloud realm, it was not obvious. However, the thundercloud force that had already risen to the initial cloud realm surprised Chiyu. He quietly tested it, and clearly felt that the thundercloud force in his body could produce changes that he could not achieve before. He could already use some simple Kirin techniques. Although he was not very comfortable yet, it was only a matter of time. With the previous lesson, this time, Chiyu did not dare to be careless at all. He followed the usual cultivation method and operated his thundercloud force. At the same time, he was multitasking. While cultivating, he carefully controlled his Kirin aura so that it would not leak out of his body due to the changes in the thundercloud force. Time often passed quickly when one was cultivating. After another 10 hours of flight, the plane that had escaped from danger finally landed on the tarmac of the Sun Nation's capital international airport. Chapter 35. Jida felt the strange gazes from the other three souls. He could not help but cough dryly and pull Chiyu. Chiyu glanced at him and said, "Don't you think so? We were almost done for this time." Jida's gaze swept across the surrounding passengers. He could see a sense of relief from their bodies. Most of them were sighing in admiration. Although they were not as exaggerated as Chiyu, they all had expressions of relief on their faces. He shook his head helplessly and said, "All right, Sherbo, let's go." The heavenly soul came to Chiyu's side and looked at his hair, which was even more exaggerated than his own. He said in a low voice, "Brother, thanks for this." Chiyu was stunned. "Thanks? For what?" The heavenly soul smiled and said, "At that time, only you, me, and the plant soul did not faint. I saw everything that happened. Although I don't know how you did it, it's true that you saved the entire plane. Now, I'm even more confident in this mission." Back then, he had clearly seen Chiyu's body flickering with purple lightning. Although the enormous lightning energy had suppressed him to the point where he could not move, it had not affected his observation of his surroundings. In Tianhuan's eyes, Chiyu's strength was unimaginable. To think that he could actually fight against the heavens. This was no longer something that could be explained by humans. If he was not one of the higher-ups of a yellow flame soul and had a strong will, he would have treated Chiyu as a monster. Chiyu did not know that he had become a heaven-rank expert in the eyes of the heavenly soul. The four of them left the airport and got into a taxi. Chiyu heard the heavenly soul say a few words in the sun language that he did not understand at all. The taxi was already driving along the highway into the city. "Jida, do all of you know the sun language?" Chiyu asked curiously. Jida scratched his head and said, "I can understand a little, but it's difficult to speak. My English, German, and French are better. It's a pity that my language talent is a bit lacking." Big brother Tianhun, on the other hand, was amazing. He knew 16 languages and was definitely a genius among geniuses. "Then I'm the dumbest of the dumbest," Chiyu thought to himself. Back when he was in school, he had advocated that if he hadn't even learned the culture of the Yanhuang Republic that spanned over 5,000 years, how could he learn a foreign language that was similar to bird language? Therefore, apart from knowing a few simple letters, it could be said that he knew nothing about foreign languages. It was his first time coming to a foreign country. Naturally, he would look like an alien. Tianhun turned around and said, "Don't praise me anymore. You're making me feel ashamed in front of brother Chiyu." Chiyu chuckled and said, "Big brother, don't be so modest. Where are we going?" Tianhun gave Chiyu a look. He smiled and said, "You'll know when we get there." Chiyu's heart skipped a beat. Only now did he remember that the Sun Nation wasn't here for fun, but for an important mission. He nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He looked out the window. The Sun Nation was a small island nation and couldn't be compared to the Yanhuang Republic at all. When the taxi drove into the city, looking at the narrow streets, Chiyu couldn't help but pout. However, he had to admit that the people of the Sun Nation, whom he hated the most, had a good sense of order. Although the streets were narrow, there were few traffic jams along the way. The Sun Nation was a small island nation and couldn't be compared to the Yanhuang Republic at all. When the four of them got out of the taxi, a tall building appeared in front of Chiyu. It was about 40 to 50 stories tall and had a simple and bright appearance. There were people constantly going in and out of the main door, and they all seemed to be very busy. The computer soul said, "The pace of life in the Sun Nation is much faster than in our country. This is our destination." Chiyu asked in a low voice, "Is that professor here?" The computer soul smiled and said, "Of course not. Of course not. Our mission isn't that simple. First, we need to find a place to stay and investigate everything clearly before we can start our operation. This is an office building, and our people are inside. Brother Chiyu, from now on, we have to be extra careful when we talk. Don't call each other names." The Sky Soul's voice suddenly changed from solemn to frivolous. Let's go. Let's go up. Not only did his tone change, even his vocal cords had completely changed. If it wasn't for the fact that she had been with them the whole time, it would be very hard for him to believe that these two completely different voices were actually coming from the same mouth. Bursting into the office building, Chiyu couldn't help but have a feeling that there was too much for his eyes to take in. His eyes searched everywhere. After leaving the Yinhuang Republic, his easygoing personality allowed him to quickly recover from the unhappiness at Qingbei University. His ruffian personality was once again revealed, and his eyes searched everywhere for beautiful women, preparing to gorge himself on ice cream. However, he was soon disappointed. From the moment they entered the office building until they took the elevator to the 33rd floor, they saw more than 100 people along the way, but not even 1/10 of them were women. Most of them were old and yellow or ugly dinosaur-level women. He couldn't help but be greatly disappointed. After getting off the elevator, Chiyu couldn't help but grumble, "Don't tell me there aren't any beautiful women in the Sun Nation." Getting off the elevator, Chiyu couldn't help but grumble. There were only two types of women in the Sun Nation. Generally speaking, the more serious ones stayed at home. The Sun Nation only has two types of women. Generally speaking, the more serious women stay at home. The men are responsible for working to support their wives. As for the other type, those who showed their faces in public, they could be measured in terms of money. The other type, which is those who show their faces in public, can be measured by money. The fat on the Sky Soul's face twitched, and he said disdainfully, "There's no need to be so vague. They're just prostitutes. To put it nicely, they're called AV girls. Everyone on Earth knows this. AV girls. I've heard that there's some kind of support group or something like that." Chiyu fell into deep thought and said, "Then if I F***CK them, does that count as bringing glory to our country?" The four souls' bodies stiffened at the same time. The Sky Soul's face showed a hint of awkwardness. The plant soul frowned, and Jita secretly gave Chiyu the middle finger. Meanwhile, the computer soul's face, which had become radiant because of the fat on his body, suddenly became even more radiant. He grabbed Chiyu's hand and said, "Brother, great minds really think alike." Chiyu chuckled and pulled his hand back. He said, "Brother, I didn't come down from the back mountain. However, if there's a chance, we can go and take a look together." The two perverted fellows couldn't help but laugh lewdly. The Sky Soul coughed. "Sure, let's talk inside." As he spoke, he pointed at a room and pressed a few numbers on the electronic door. The door opened, and the five of them filed in. Inside was a spacious office that was about 100 square meters. In a place like the capital of the Sun Nation, every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. It was already not a small office. As soon as the five of them entered, two people immediately came up to greet them. Both of them were men who looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. They were wearing well-ironed suits. They were dressed in standard white-collar attire. The Sky Soul nodded at them and extended his right hand. One of the men took out a small device that looked like a PDA. The Sky Soul pressed his finger on it. At the same time, he took the device from the other man and put it on his eye. Fingerprint verification, iris verification. "Welcome, Captain Sky Soul." The young man on the right smiled and put the device away. He nodded at the five of them. The Sky Soul said, "Is this a good place?" The young man on the right said, "No problem. We've installed special devices here. Even satellite scans can be simulated and filtered. Don't worry. We've already received the notice yesterday. Let's go inside first." While the Sky Soul was talking to the other party, Chiyu couldn't help but look around the office. There were 8 desks in the office, and there were 6 computer screens on each desk. There was a string of Sun language on the wall of the office. He couldn't understand it. It probably meant something like a company or something. The screens weren't written in Sun language. They were written in English, which was used internationally. The strings of complicated numbers were a headache to look at. It felt like a small high-tech company. Chiyu and the other 4 were led by the 2 young men into the room. As soon as they entered, the Kirin thundercloud force in Chiyu's body stirred slightly. He could clearly sense that there was an inexplicable energy fluctuation in the room. When he sensed it carefully, he could sense that the energy fluctuation wasn't threatening. It was just moving irregularly inside the walls. It was constantly changing. This is more convenient. Captain Skysoul, my code name is Sunslayer. This is my colleague, Sunslayer. If you need anything, we'll do our best to help. The young man on the right introduced. The room inside was a large office. There was a large leather chair behind the boss's desk and a row of sofas in front of the desk. Under Sunslayer's signal, everyone sat down on the sofa. Skysoul's voice became low again as he said, Sunslayer, is there any news from Professor Guanping? Sunslayer frowned slightly and said, recently, we've been trying to contact Professor Guanping, but the Sun Nation's secret forces are monitoring him too closely. In order not to alert them, we can only give up. From the looks of it now, Professor Guanping is already in a very dangerous situation. If it wasn't for the fact that there are still a few difficult points in his research that haven't been solved, I'm afraid the Sun Nation would have already made a move on him. Skysoul nodded and said, Professor Guanping is one of us. He has a quick mind, so I think he won't be in danger for the time being. Give me an electronic map of the Research Institute's vicinity, as well as a copy of the surveillance cameras. We'll study it carefully before carrying out the investigation. We mustn't make a move unless we're 80% sure. Sunslayer said, I've already prepared all that. I believe that with your strength, it won't be difficult to get rid of those people monitoring him. What's more troublesome now is from the sky. Skysoul was shocked and said, You're saying that the Sun Nation's government actually mobilized satellites? Sunslayer nodded, and Sunnihilator said, There's at least a 90% chance that there's satellite surveillance, and there's more than one. They're all the latest products of the Sun Nation, so it'll be very difficult to disrupt their frequency bands. If you guys are targeted by the satellite, not only will you not be able to rescue Professor Guanping, but you'll also be in trouble. The Sun Nation still has some special experts. Jita snorted and said, Those little Sun Nation people are really cautious. Sunslayer smiled and said, It's no wonder they're so cautious. After all, the results of Professor Guanping's research are not only very important to our country, but they'll also be a great boost to the development of the entire human race. It can be said that obtaining all of this technology is enough to make a country powerful in a few years or decades. Furthermore, according to the latest news we've received, even the United States has sent agents here. Therefore, we won't be dealing with just one wave of enemies this time. There are still other unknown enemies, and we can't imagine how powerful they are. Sunnihilator said, Tian Hun, I think you guys need to seek support. Tian Hun shook his head and raised his right hand to touch the silver earring on his ear. He thought for a while and said, There's no need for that at the moment, and we don't have enough time. Since the situation is so tense, we have to pick up the pace of our operation. I think we can complete this mission. Computer Soul, you have to get to work. Computer Soul looked at Chi-Yu helplessly and said, Brother, for the sake of our country, we can only use the situation of the mission this time. Chi-Yu couldn't help but chuckle when he saw Computer Soul's comical expression. He said, Go on with your work. Business is more important. Brother Slayer, can you arrange a place for us to stay first? Sunslayer looked at Chi-Yu curiously, and his eyes flickered. Captain Tian Hun, according to our information, you seem to have 4 people on this trip. Tian Hun saw the doubt in his eyes and said, This is the helper we've invited, and he's very important for this mission. You can check with the boss. We didn't inform you in advance because we were pressed for time. Sunnihilator gave Sunnihilator a look, and Sunnihilator immediately walked out of the room to investigate Chi-Yu's information. Sunnihilator said apologetically, I'm sorry, Captain Tian Hun. Although I trust you completely, Tian Hun smiled and said, There's no need to explain. I understand. If it were me, I would have done the same. Computer Soul stretched out his chubby hands and said, Is the thing I want ready? Sunnihilator nodded and walked to the back of the boss's desk. He pressed the surface of the desk gently, and a dent appeared in the middle of the desk. Immediately after, a metal compartment appeared in front of everyone. As the compartment rose, a computer that didn't look very big was revealed. It's all prepared according to your request. The network is directly connected to our country's divine continent number 9 satellite through a special channel. You can connect to any place in the world. You can also do what you need directly through the satellite. Upon seeing the computer, Fatso's expression became as excited as when he had talked to Chi-Yu about the AV girls from the Sun Nation. He couldn't wait to take the computer out of the hidden compartment and sat behind the boss's desk without any hesitation. The moment he turned on the computer, his expression became focused. Feeling the tense atmosphere in the room, Chi-Yu couldn't help but feel a little bored. He sat alone on the sofa. Perhaps sensing the change in his mood, Tian-hun turned back and smiled at him. "Brother, don't be anxious. We'll naturally have a place to go later." Chi-Yu smiled and said, "It's fine. You guys get back to work first. I'm fine." Even if he was a ruffian, he knew the principle of patriotism. After hearing about the importance of Professor Guan Ping from Soul Annihilator, although he was a little bored now, he definitely wouldn't interfere with the other party's work. Computer Soul looked up at them and said with a smile, "Now is the time for me to be busy. When the real operation starts, I'll have to rely on you guys. Damn, it's really troublesome to have satellite surveillance. If only I could become invisible, then I wouldn't have to waste my brain cells to crack their satellites." Chi had just stood up from the sofa. When he heard what Computer Soul said, an idea flashed in his mind, and he blurted out, "I have a way to become invisible." As soon as he said that, he instantly became the focus of the room. Computer Soul looked at him in shock, but the expressions of Heavenly Soul and Plant Soul did not change. Jita's expression was the most interesting. He opened his mouth wide and said, "No way, Master. You can even become invisible? Simple invisibility won't work. Satellite scanning can directly scan any trace of life. It includes monitoring through heat, breathing, and many other aspects. It doesn't mean that you can't see anything on the surface." Chi-Yu chuckled and did not reply. His right hand brushed across his chest, and his body made a half-turn. A layer of faint dark red light floated out, and at the same time he turned around, a layer of faint red light floated out. When he turned around, it completely enveloped his body. Everyone then saw that Chi-Yu's body was completely wrapped in a dark red ancient cloak. A formless bloody aura and an indescribable sense of oppression floated out from this cloak and spread throughout the entire room. If they were not in the venue, they would not be ordinary people. The bloody aura was probably too much for them to bear. "Appear," as Chi-Yu shouted in a low voice. The aura that had suddenly appeared disappeared into thin air. At the same time, Chi-Yu's body also disappeared. It was as if he had suddenly disappeared into thin air. He didn't leave any traces behind. Light flashed in Heavenly Soul's eyes, and a white halo was released from his body. The halo seemed to have a life of its own and started to circle in the room. It was like a cruise missile that was searching for its target as it spun rapidly in the room. Heavenly Soul's expression gradually changed. He was shocked to discover that his usually successful exploration halo couldn't find any traces of Chi-Yu. He couldn't even find a trace of his aura. This was something that had never happened before. Chi-Yu was indeed invisible. As one of Kirin's octatic treasures, Kirin's invisibility was ranked last on Kirin's octatic treasures. However, its ability definitely couldn't be ignored. Xieji had once told Chi-Yu that Kirin's invisibility could not only hide its body, but it could also hide all of Kirin's aura. This naturally included its life aura and heat energy. In fact, Kirin's octatic treasures had always been a mystery to Kirin's octatic treasures. This was because the energy it possessed was too strange, especially its sorrowful aura. There were very few Kirin that could use Kirin's octatic treasures. Furthermore, there wasn't a single Kirin or Kirin's octatic treasures that could conceal all of its energy. Therefore, its power had always been a mystery. Invisibility. The first was to use invisibility. Chi-Yu also felt that it was very magical. When he looked down, his body had already disappeared. Kirin's invisibility wasn't like Kirin's red, which required a lot of his thundercloud force and could only last for a very short few seconds. When his thundercloud force was injected into Kirin's invisibility, he immediately felt as if his body was wrapped in a thin layer of energy. Although the thundercloud force was also gradually consumed, the consumption rate was very slow. It was just that all of the thundercloud force was completely locked by Kieran's invisibility. Chiyu knew that as long as his thundercloud force didn't do anything else before the thundercloud force was completely consumed, he could continue to maintain his current appearance without being discovered by anyone. This is amazing, Master. How did you do it? Jita looked a little excited as he stared at the position where Chiyu stood before and exclaimed. There was a flash of light, and the dark red cloak disappeared without a trace. Chiyu reappeared in front of everyone. This is the secret of the Guardian of the East. However, I think my invisibility ability should be able to evade the surveillance of satellites. I don't have much ability, so if this ability can be of any help to you, feel free to tell me. Tianhun looked deeply at Chiyu and said, I believe you can do it. My exploration halo has an ability similar to satellite positioning. It can also find the aura of life, and my spiritual power has already locked onto you. However, I still couldn't find your position after you went invisible. This is really amazing. It seems like it was the right choice to invite Brother Chi along this time. Mian looked at Chiyu in a daze. He still couldn't believe that everything that had just happened was real. He rubbed his eyes and said, Oh my God, so you're actually from the Guardian of the East. No wonder Captain Tianhun was so fearless. Tianhun said, Since we have a way to deal with satellite surveillance, it will be much easier for us to act. Mian walked over to Computer Soul, retrieved the electronic map that Tianhun had asked for, and explained it to Computer Soul in detail. Tianhun walked over to Chiyu's side and patted him on the shoulder. There was a look of admiration in his eyes. Chiyu enjoyed this feeling. In the past, he had often been ignored, but today, he had become the focus of everyone's attention. Although he knew that his ability was far from being strong enough, at least he was already useful. He was no longer the good-for-nothing ruffian he used to be. Annihilator walked in from outside and nodded at Tianhun. Annihilator smiled and said, Brother Chi has already proven his ability to us just now. Let me see. You guys can stay here for the next few days. In order to rescue Dr. Guan Ping, I will have to inconvenience you guys. Chiyu asked curiously, There are so many desks outside. Aren't there any staff? Annihilator said, Of course there are, but they're all our people. We have been running this company for almost 10 years. You guys better not leave easily. Tianhun smiled and said, No, not only do we have to go out. Moreover, we have to appear outside often before the operation. Although this company of yours has been running for a long time, I believe that you have a solid foundation here. However, this was a critical period if the Sun Nation government was cautious enough. I think their surveillance range will expand to every corner of the capital. If we don't appear outside after coming in, it will not be good. It will not be good if we arouse suspicion. Computer Soul, stay here. We will find a hotel outside to stay. Contact us directly through the Shinjo No. 9 satellite. Before the operation begins, we will try not to come here again. Computer Soul, transfer the information here to the computer and meet us directly at the hotel. Computer Soul chuckled and said, Boss is really thoughtful. After all, we are entering the country as tourists. All right, let's do that. You guys go first. Inform me of the location later. As he spoke, he gave Chiyu a warm smile. Annihilator frowned and said, Is this appropriate? Captain Tianhun, your safety is very important. Tianhun stopped him from continuing. He touched his colorful hair and smiled. It's good to be cautious, but it's easy to make mistakes if you're overly cautious. Don't worry, this isn't our first time on a mission. I know what I'm doing. Annihilator, after we leave, transfer the information here as soon as possible. Wait for my notice. Once the mission is completed, you guys will immediately leave this place. Do you understand? Annihilator said seriously, Yes, Captain Tianhun. Tianhun picked up his simple luggage and said, All right, then we will leave first. Yen Huang prospers, the soul of Jiuzhou. When they left the office building and returned to the streets of the Sun Nation, Chiyu couldn't help but laugh. How exciting. I didn't expect that I would also have a taste of being a special agent. Jita said, "Is it very enjoyable?" "I don't think so." "Master, what other tricks do you have?" "No matter what, I'm your only disciple. Why don't you pass it on to me as well?" Looking at Jita's fawning smile, Chi snapped, "Didn't I introduce your grandmaster to you?" Jita said, "But I want to learn the technique that allowed me to completely hide my aura. If I learn it, it will be much easier to carry out missions in the future." Chi was stunned at first. Then, he couldn't help but laugh. "So you want to learn the invisibility technique? That's easy." "Easy? Hurry up and teach me then." Jita was instantly excited when he heard this. Even the heavenly soul and plant soul turned their attention to Chiyu. Chiyu chuckled and said, "Of course it's easy. In the future, if you recite the word invisibility 10,000 times a day for 20 years, you will probably achieve some small success." The smile on Jita's face froze. 20 years. "Master, how old are you this year?" Chiyu snorted and said, "I am a genius. Can you compare to me?" Jita looked at Chiyu in a daze. After a long time, he said, "Master, I realize that you are really stupid." "Damn, you're only stupid." Chiyu wanted to knock Jita's head, but he immediately dispelled the idea because of Jita's extraordinary height. He said resentfully, "You are so impolite. You want to learn the invisibility technique with your height?" Jita laughed bitterly. "Master, don't play with me. Are you going to teach me or not?" Chiyu said, "Teach, of course I will teach you. Didn't I already tell you the cultivation method?" Jita stared at Chiyu. "Master, what about you? Do you think the invisibility technique is something that anyone can learn? Do you know what it means to be a genius? Have you heard of being gifted? I, your master, am one of them. Only a handsome, confident, tall, mighty, and elegant young man like me can learn it. You're still far from it." Tianhun, who was at the side, laughed. The plant's soul pretended to vomit, but its big, watery eyes were also full of laughter. "Damn, master, you are so disgusting." Chiyu magically took out a plastic bag from his pocket and handed it to Jita. "Go vomit at the side. No one is stopping you." Jita looked up and sighed. "Oh my God, let me find a piece of tofu and kill myself." Tianhun laughed and said, "All right, stop fooling around. Brother Chi, to be honest, if you're really willing to teach me the invisibility technique, I think I can promise you everything you want on behalf of the country." He naturally knew how valuable the invisibility technique, especially one that could completely hide one's aura, was. Although he knew that the possibility of the secret technique being taught to outsiders was very small, he could not help but voice his thoughts. Chiyu knew that he could not go too far with his joke, so he said seriously, "If I can really teach you, I will not be stingy. You might not believe me, but I have always relied on the country's subsidies to survive. If I can repay the country in any way, I am naturally willing to do it. Unfortunately, this invisibility technique can only be practiced by myself. Simply put, it is indeed a matter of talent. I think that as members of the Yellow Flame Soul, you should know that many of the abilities of the Eastern Guardians are innate. For example, I know an Eastern Guardian who has the spiritual power storm. Perhaps her ability is somewhat similar to Brother Tianhuan's." He had seen Tianhun use his ability several times. Although you could not accurately grasp what his ability was, he could vaguely feel that the ability he used should be closely related to spiritual power. Of course, Shun Yun's spiritual power storm was obviously not comparable to Tianhuan's, but at least from the manifestation of the ability, it should be of the same origin. Tianhun was stunned for a moment, then sighed and said, "I also thought of this possibility. Yes, regardless of whether it is the ancient Eastern Guardians or us postnatal mutants, they are all related to talent. I have also heard that the inheritance of the Eastern Guardians is not as simple as talent. Even bloodline inheritance is very important. What a pity. If the Eastern Guardians were willing to help our country like Brother Chi, I think our Yanwang Republic would definitely become more powerful. Unfortunately, the inheritance of this bloodline is too difficult. It is hard to imagine how to pass on your ability." Chiyu laughed and said, "It is not that there is no way. If I can have 100 beautiful women to be my wives, maybe one of them will have my ability in the future." Chapter 36. Gosh, are you really going to give me 100 beauties? Chiyu stared at the Sky Soul with his eyes wide open. The Sky Soul smiled and said, "If you can prove that your suggestion is effective, I think the country will fulfill your wish. It's fine to sacrifice something for the country. Besides, I'm sure there are many beauties who would love to be your wife, brothers Chi." Chiyu's eyes lit up. "Is that so? All right. I'll find a way to prove it to you when we get back." Although he knew that the inheritance of Kieran's bloodline was not that simple, he could not help but feel excited when he thought about the possibility of getting 100 beauties. The four of them chatted as they walked. Due to Chiyu's jokes, the atmosphere was very relaxed. Even the plant soul, who could not speak, would smile faintly from time to time. They walked along the street. As they were walking, they suddenly heard some noise in front of them. The four of them looked forward and saw a figure quickly running in their direction. There were 3 or 4 people chasing after him with all their might. Although they were empty-handed, they could see sharp weapons hanging from their waists as they ran. No way, are they going to kill people on the street? Seeing this scene, Chiyu could not help but become excited. In the past, he had also chased people on the streets like this. However, he had always used a brick as a weapon and rarely used a blade. Bricks had always been Chiyu's favorite. Just like what he told Vol, first of all, bricks were not controlled. Secondly, bricks were more destructive than swords to a certain extent. Thirdly, bricks were not only a close-range weapon, but they could also be used as long-range weapons. He fully demonstrated this advantage when he was fighting against Yin Xiaoi. Lastly, and most importantly, bricks were cheap and could even be found by the roadside. They were very suitable to be used as weapons at any time. They were definitely the best choice for fighting. Therefore, when Chiyu saw the chase, he could not help but feel excited and wanted to rush forward. Unfortunately, the streets of the Sun Nation were very clean, so it was not easy to find a brick. Moreover, he did not know these people. This plan only flashed through his mind for a moment before disappearing. Chiyu was surprised to see the person running in front of him getting closer. This person with long black hair was actually a woman. Her running posture was extremely agile, obviously not something an ordinary person could do. There was no sign of panic on her face. Instead, there was a hint of coldness in her eyes. As he ran, the corner of his mouth revealed a cruel glint. Ever since he inherited Kieran's bloodline, Chiyu had become very sensitive to auras. As soon as he saw this girl, he could sense an aura that far surpassed that of ordinary people. This kind of aura made people feel uncomfortable, and it was most suitable to describe it as bone-chilling cold. The girl running in front was wearing a tight-fitting leather jacket that outlined her perfect curves. The twin peaks on her chest rose and fell as she ran. However, the range was not large. It was obvious that she was very firm. It gave people the feeling that they wanted to use their hands to grab breasts. The girl in black quickly approached Chiyu's group of 4. Her eyes first swept past Chiyu's face. Although it was just a quick glance, Chiyu was surprised to find that the girl's eyes were blue, unlike the black of Asians. However, her cold appearance and black hair were clearly Asians' characteristics. Mixed blood, she was actually a mixed blood beauty. Chiyu always had a preference for special beauties, just like how he had fantasized about Su Qing and Xunyan. Once he found out that the girl in black was mixed blood, his interest was instantly piqued. The hero's desire to save the beauty rose. There were 4 people chasing from behind, dressed in the standard triad attire of black suits, white shirts, and black sunglasses. All of them ran at an extremely fast speed, and they had already caught up to the black-clothed woman the moment she passed by Chiyu. Chiyu intentionally or unintentionally stretched his left leg to the side. He whistled and stopped as if nothing had happened. The man in black running at the front was about to be tripped by his leg. At this moment, Chiyu heard the man in black shouting Begyalu. His body actually bounced up from the ground, and with the momentum of his forward charge, he kicked at Chiyu's head. Chiyu did not expect his opponent to react so quickly. In terms of fighting skills, he was very weak. However, he had a lot of fighting experience. When he saw the man in black jumping up, he immediately squatted down. He felt a gust of wind blow past his head, and his standing hair was obviously blown to the side by the wind. What a strong leg. Chiyu knew that he had hit an iron plate. When he was hesitating about whether to use Kirin's ability, a low shout was heard. With a loud bang, the body of the man in black flew out, collided with his three companions, and rolled on the ground. Master, don't dirty your hands. Let me do it. Jita took a casual step and came to Chiyu's side. When facing Chiyu, he was approachable, but when facing an enemy, the invisible domineering aura on him could not help but rise. His tall and burly figure was like an eagle catching chicks in front of the four people of the sun who were less than 7 meters tall. They were not proportional at all. The four men in black looked at each other and growled at the same time. A cold light flashed, and each of them pulled out a samurai short sword from the waist of their clothes. As soon as they saw the sharp weapons, the pedestrians on the street immediately moved away, and most of them looked panicked. Meanwhile, the woman who had run away earlier had stopped and turned to look at Chiyu. Chiyu quickly put on a smile that he thought was handsome and elegant. He said in a dignified manner, "Chasing a beauty on the street, you guys are not good people. Immoral, destroy them." When he said this, he forgot that this was the Sun Nation. It seemed that no one could understand his Yanhuang language. Without Chiyu saying anything, Jita had already gone up to meet them. Even if it were 4 pistols, he would not care. He kept his hands at his waist, and his legs sprang up like a phantom. For muffled grunts sounded almost at the same time, and the bodies of the 4 men in black were kicked out at the same time. Without looking, Chiyu knew that these 4 people would not be able to live without lying in the hospital for a while. He had tested Jita's leg strength himself. Against these people from the small Sun Nation, even if he held back, he would not go easy on them. A few broken bones was already considered light. Tianhun growled, "Let's go. Don't be a busybody." Jita hurriedly agreed. He respected this Tianhun team leader very much. When he thought of the mission, he could not help but blame himself for being too rash. A dog catching a mouse. The leather-clad beauty snorted coldly. She actually spoke in the standard Yanhuang language. Her beautiful figure shuttled through the crowd, leaving only a faint black shadow behind. "Brothers Chi, it's time to go, lest the Sun Nation's police come looking for trouble." Tianhuan's tone was somewhat reproachful. Clearly, he was blaming Chiyu for being a busybody. Chiyu shrugged helplessly and followed. However, the mixed-blood beauty with cold eyes had left a deep impression in his heart. The 4 of them passed through the streets and alleys. Very quickly, they left the previous place. Tianhun seemed to be very familiar with the capital of the Sun Nation. He quickly led the 3 of them through a few streets and arrived at a medium-sized hotel. "Let's stay here for now. Brothers Chi, the internal power of the Sun Nation is very chaotic, and killing is not uncommon. We have our own things to do. It's better not to get involved in such things in the future. Especially don't show your strength in front of ordinary people." Chiyu touched the hair on his head and said awkwardly, "I'm sorry. I'll be careful next time." The plant soul gestured towards Chiyu with a smile on its face. Of course, it was mockery. Chiyu turned to Jita and asked, "What does her gesture mean?" Jita snickered and said, "Pervert." The 3 of them booked 3 rooms. Plant soul had a room for himself, Chiyu and Jita in one, and Tianhun and Computer Soul, who had yet to arrive, shared a room. "Everyone, let's take a rest first. We've been on the plane for a long time and experienced the lightning storm. I think you must be tired. How about this? I'll treat you to Sun Nation cuisine in an hour," Tianhun said to the 3 of them with a smile. Chiyu rubbed his stomach. He did not eat much on the plane because he was afraid of heights. He also drank a lot the night before and did not eat much. Now, his stomach was already empty. He quickly said, "Why don't we go eat now? What do you think?" Jita said, "I don't care. It's up to you." Plant Soul also gave a casual smile. Tianhun said, "All right then. We'll go after we put down our luggage." "Brother Chi, what do you want to eat? Women are very popular here." Chiyu stuck out his tongue and said, "Forget it. Although I like beautiful women, to be honest, I'm still very traditional. I'm especially not interested in the women of the Sun Nation. I'm afraid none of the women here are clean. It's not good if they get dirty outside. As long as I can eat my fill, I'm fine with anything." Jita gave Chiyu a thumbs up and said, Master, I support you. I also hate people from the Sun Nation. Chiyu snapped. What support? If you want to support me, go to Back Mountain. Master, you're so perverted. Thanks for the compliment. Don't you know? In my dictionary, the word lewd is a compliment. Damn. Master, you're so stupid. Stupid my ass. If you don't like it, let's fight. Chiyu looked at Jida provocatively. Jida was instantly discouraged. Forget it, I'll endure it. Chiyu chuckled and said, That's my good disciple. All right, let's go and put down your luggage so we can eat. Tianhun looked deeply at Chiyu and said before he left, Brothers Chi, I've realized that you're really suitable to join us. Because you don't need to disguise yourself or pretend to be anyone for missions. Just be yourself. After saying that, he and the smiling plant soul went back to their rooms to put down their luggage. Chiyu looked at Jida and said, What did he mean? Jida smiled and said, Nothing. Did you see what he looked like? Big brother Tianhun made himself look like this to cover up his righteous appearance. He said you don't need to disguise yourself. What he means is simple. You don't look like a good person and don't need to pretend anymore. I am a decent person. Do you believe it yourself? Go to hell. If it wasn't for Ming Ming, I'd kick you out. Master, I'm so scared. F***CKU, you don't want to eat? Be careful that I don't knock you out tonight. Then, I'll take off your clothes and hang you on the flagpole outside with 4 words written on it. What 4 words? Jida asked curiously. Chrysanthemum blooming. After a few minutes, the 4 of them gathered in the lobby of the hotel. Tianhun saw that Jida's expression was a little ugly and could not help but look at him with a questioning gaze. Jida looked at the smug Chiyu and said, Let's go, big brother Tianhun. Let's go eat. Tianhun looked at Chiyu's ruffian face and smiled kindly. All right, I asked the waiter just now. He said there's a good restaurant next door. Let's go eat there. By the time the 4 of them left the door, the sky outside had already darkened completely. The neon lights on the streets were lit up. Although this was not a red light district, as soon as the sky turned dark, they could immediately see palm-sized girls walking around the streets with scantily clad bodies. Chi took a few glances and could not help but twitch his mouth. Far from it. It's not wrong to be ugly, but it's wrong to go out and scare people. Jida was stunned for a moment before he said, Master, aren't your standards too high? I think there are a few of them that aren't good enough. Chiyu snorted and said, What do you know? You can't look at these women from the Sun Nation like the beauties of our Yanhuang Republic. Think about it. If these women from the Sun Nation were to be written with the word sun dog, what would they look like? Would you still think they're pretty? They're not even as attractive as the legendary sister Furong from our Yanhuang Republic. Oh, that's right, wicked disciple. I just remembered something. With your physique, ordinary women definitely won't be able to bear it. I feel that big sister Furong, who has an extremely voluptuous figure, is very suitable for you. I'll find a way to introduce her to you later. Master, I didn't offend you, did I? Jida looked at Chiyu with bloodshot eyes. He felt like he was going crazy. Chiyu chuckled and said, Of course not. But I've always been a vengeful person. I still remember when you told me to stay away from Ming Ming. If you become my brother-in-law one day, I'll definitely consider introducing a beauty to you. F***CKU, you can't do that, Jida said seriously. Chiyu was stunned. Why? I'm not good enough for Ming Ming. He was only joking, but seeing Jida's serious expression, his stubborn temper could not help but surge. No, it's not that you're not good enough. Sherbo, how should I say this? Jida saw that Chiyu's expression was a little off. His tone immediately softened. All right, you don't need to say any more. I understand. Chiyu sighed. His gaze looked towards the direction of the Yanhuang Republic. He could not help but feel a little dazed. Because of Jida's words, he recalled his last day at Qingbei University. He could not help but shake his head in self-mockery. Master, it's not what you think. I don't have the intention to look down on you. With your strength, you're definitely good enough for Ming Ming. It's just that Ming Ming is already engaged. It's impossible for her to marry you. Jida hurriedly explained. Chiyu looked at him in shock. What? You said Ming Ming is already engaged? Why haven't I heard of it before? Jida said, Ming Ming is indeed engaged. That was when she was 15 years old. Chiyu smiled. but his eyes flickered with a faint cold light. Wicked disciple. Even if you're making up lies, you need to think clearly. What era is it now? You actually gave me a child's marriage. Do you think I should believe it? Jita smiled bitterly. If I were you, I wouldn't believe it either. But this is indeed the truth. Master, I will not lie. From the day I entered the army, I no longer know how to lie. Ming Ming is indeed engaged. This marriage is very important to our Ji family. You can understand it as a political marriage. At the same time, you can also understand it as a national marriage. It can't be. Chi saw that Jita did not seem to be joking. His heart immediately had a kind of uncomfortable feeling. With your family's old man's position, is there a need for a political marriage? Jita nodded his head. That's right. In the eyes of outsiders, our family's old man has already reached the peak of power. But this marriage is not for my father. It's for our country. What do you mean? Why can't I understand? Chi frowned. Jita sighed and said, I didn't want to say this at first. But, Master, I'm afraid that you really like my sister. After all, she is so pure and beautiful. Although you have always been a pervert. But I can see that you are actually very cautious with women, and you are not a promiscuous person. If it's really possible, I hope that Ming Ming can be with you. Unfortunately, this is impossible. About 5 years ago, you should have heard about the visit of the Greek president. Chi shook his head and said, I rarely care about these national affairs. What exactly happened? Tell me directly. Jita said, it's that time. When the Greek president visited our Yanhuang Republic, he was accompanied by his only 17-year-old son. At a banquet, they accidentally saw Ming Ming. The Greek president was shocked by Ming Ming, who was only 14 years old at that time. He proposed a cross-border marriage, hoping that Ming Ming would marry his son. F***CKME. Does your family's old man want Ming Ming to marry a second generation? It can't be. Greece is not a strong country. Is there a need to curry favor? Jita unhappily glared at Chi and said, what second generation? Even I have to admit that the only son of the Greek president is an extremely outstanding talent. He's only 17 years old and has already completed his doctorate. Furthermore, he is well-spoken and has great talent in sports. Not only does this president have the support of a famous Greek ship king, he is also the person with the highest prestige in Greece. His son is extremely outstanding, and both his character and appearance are top-notch. As for the curry favor you mentioned, although it is a bit unpleasant to hear, our country really wants to establish a closer friendship with Greece. Although Greece is not big, its position in the West is very important. You should have heard of the deification of ancient Greece. Just like your Easter guardian, Greece has the most powerful guardian in the West. Therefore, as long as we establish a good relationship with Greece, even a country as strong as the United States will not dare to offend us. Western guardian? Hearing this term, Chi couldn't help but feel moved. He recalled the introduction that Hai Ryue gave him, and his brows furrowed even more. The implications are indeed extensive. Therefore, my father agreed after asking Ming Ming. Although this is a political marriage, Ming Ming and the Greek president's son had a good chat and seemed to get along well. At that time, she did not object. Therefore, the marriage was set. It was agreed that when Ming Ming turned 20, she would marry in Greece. Hearing Jita's words, Chi seemed a little lost. He recalled the night under the lotus pond, under the moonlight, and the various things that happened when he was with Ming Ming. He suddenly realized that his heart was empty, as if he had lost the most precious thing in his life. The plant soul and the heavenly soul kept walking in front, as if they didn't hear their conversation. Not long after, they arrived at a restaurant in the Sun Nation next to the hotel where they were staying. All right, we're here. Let's eat first. The heavenly soul turned around and looked at the dejected Chiyu. Jita felt a little helpless, but he also knew that the sooner he told Chiyu about this, the better it would be for him and his sister. Damn it, I don't want to think about it anymore. I'll deal with the situation when it comes. I want to turn my grief into food. Chiyu was the first to enter the restaurant as the three of them stared at him. It was as if he was going to battlefield. The heavenly soul laughed. He's really thick-skinned. Jita laughed and said, being able to pick up and let go. That's how a man should be. As soon as they entered the restaurant, the first thing Chi-Yu saw were two waitresses in short skirts. Although they weren't tall, their clothes were very revealing. They smiled humbly and kept bowing to the customers. Walking in front of Chi-Yu into the restaurant was a fatty. The fatty's face carried a perverted smile as he casually grabbed the chest of a young receptionist. The young receptionist's face froze for a moment before immediately recovering her smile. She hurriedly nodded and bowed as she said something. The fatty chuckled and casually took out a piece of Sun Nation's money and stuffed it into the exposed cleavage of the receptionist's short jacket. The receptionist's smile immediately became even sweeter. He kept talking about "Are-you-do" and the like. What are they talking about? These Japanese women are really greedy. Chi-Yu asked Jita, who had just entered the room. Jita said, "What else can they say? It's like this in the Sun Nation. Men's status is always much higher than women's. Not to mention touching her. Even if you slap her, she'll still smile and thank you. The people of the Sun Nation are that cheap. Master, don't tell me you want to touch her too." Chi-Yu snorted disdainfully and said, "I've decided. I won't bring glory to the country. I'm afraid of contagious diseases." The heavenly soul who entered the restaurant after him couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. The plant's soul looked at Chi-Yu, and his gaze became much gentler. It was as if he was praising his great decision. The heavenly soul asked for a private room in standard Sun Nation language. Under the guidance of a waitress, they were directly led to the private room. The restaurants in the Sun Nation all sat on the floor, which made Chi-Yu a little uncomfortable. The heavenly soul said, "What do you want to eat? Don't stand on ceremony with me." Chi-Yu shrugged and said, "Anything. As long as I can eat my fill, I'm not too picky about food." Jita said, "Me too. I'm not too interested in the food of the Sun Nation. As long as I can eat my fill." The plant soul nodded. Obviously, he agreed with Jita's opinion. After all, how could the small Sun Nation compare to the 5,000 years of culture of Yanhuang? Yanhuang's food culture was recognized as the best in the world, so they naturally wouldn't be interested in the food of the Sun Nation. The Tianhun smiled and said, "Can't help it. Since we're here, we can only eat here. Then I'll order anything." Chi-Yu naturally didn't understand what the heavenly soul wanted. He only listened to him ramble on, and it seemed like he ordered a lot of things. After a while, a table of sumptuous Sun Nation cuisine was placed on the table. Seeing that most of the food was raw, Chi-Yu couldn't help but frown. Raw. I've long heard that the people of the Sun Nation like to eat raw food. One look and you know it's not good. The Tianhun smiled and said, "Then you should eat more sushi. Actually, sashimi tastes pretty good." Chi-Yu picked up a piece of sushi and sniffed it. He frowned and said, "What is this? It smells weird." As he spoke, he had already thrown the sushi into his mouth. He was an orphan, so naturally, no one would bring him to eat the food of the Sun Nation. When he grew older, he had to rely on the country's monthly allowance to survive, so it was even more impossible for him to afford the food. This was the first time he tried the food of the Sun Nation. Puffed. He vomited faster than he ate. Chi-Yu spat out the sushi that had just entered his mouth. "My God, it's actually seaweed. The only thing I haven't eaten since I was young is seaweed." When he was young in the orphanage, Chi-Yu's greatest fear was seaweed soup. Every time he encountered this food that he hated the most, he would retch just from smelling it, let alone eating it. However, the seaweed wrapped around the sushi didn't have a strong smell, and he hadn't eaten it for many years, so he didn't smell it first. But as soon as the sushi entered his mouth, the unbearable smell immediately made him react subconsciously. Jita chewed on the sushi and said, "Master, seaweed is very nutritious. You shouldn't be picky." Chi-Yu said unhappily, "No matter how nutritious it is, I don't like it. What can I do about it? You guys eat. I really can't eat this kind of taste." As he spoke, he couldn't help but look at the plates of sashimi. The types of fish were obviously different. Although the fresh and tender fish made Chi-Yu a little uncomfortable, it was still better than seaweed. The Tianhun hurriedly said, "The Sun Nation's cuisine is also very good. How about I get some more for you? I think they have ramen or something." Chi-Yu's eyes lit up. He said, "Okay, then ramen it is. 6 bowls first." If the bowls are small, then 10. The Tianhun was speechless as he looked at Chiyu. Jita laughed and said, Brother Tianhun, my master can really eat. He didn't say that much. I'll go and get it. As he spoke, he stood up and opened the door. Although Jita's sun language was not as good as the Tianhuan's, he could still speak a few sentences. Chiyu looked at the table full of colorful delicacies, and his stomach couldn't help but pound. However, he really wasn't interested in eating raw. He felt that the people of the Sun Nation who liked to eat raw were like primitive savages. Only animals like to eat raw. It seemed like the people of the Sun Nation could really be compared to animals. However, this wasn't a problem for Chiyu. He suddenly thought of an idea. He picked up a toothpick that was 15 centimeters long and picked up a piece of raw fish. He chuckled and gently rubbed his right thumb and index finger together. There was a poof, and flames emerged from his thumb, giving the plant's soul and the heavenly soul a shock. As the flame roasted the raw fish, it quickly became cooked. Chiyu dipped in the sauce and placed in his mouth. He ate it with relish. His actions instantly made the heavenly soul and the plant's soul dumbfounded. The plant's soul subconsciously shifted his body back. He looked at the flame in Chiyu's hand and revealed a trace of uneasiness in his eyes. The Tianhun laughed bitterly. Brother Chi, it seems like you can surprise us in many ways. I didn't expect you to be a flame controller. Chiyu laughed and said, It's just a small trick. I can only use it to roast fish. Although his fire thundercloud force wasn't strong, such a small flame could still be maintained for a long time. It wasn't much different from an ordinary flame. Jita returned very quickly. When he saw the flame in Chiyu's hand, he was also very surprised. The plant soul gestured to Chiyu and then retreated. Chiyu asked, What's wrong? Little plant soul, I don't understand what you mean. The Tianhun smiled and said, Plant souls are naturally afraid of fire. When you make fire, she will subconsciously feel uneasy. Chiyu, who had just eaten a few pieces of raw fish, quickly put away the flame in his hand. I'm sorry, I don't know. He had always been very protective of this little girl, the plant's soul. When he saw that she wasn't used to it, he would rather not eat it himself than scare her. Fortunately, after a while, Chiyu's ramen was served. Finally, there was something that could fill his stomach. Chiyu didn't stand on ceremony. He hadn't eaten well for 2 days, so he instantly let go and ate heartily. When the four of them left the restaurant, the Tianhun couldn't help but pat his wallet with a pained expression. The food in the Sun Nation was very expensive, even if it was ramen. Chiyu had eaten 17 bowls. If the country hadn't reimbursed him for the mission's expenses, the Tianhun would have died of heartache. Chapter 37. Kiran's bloodline had been modifying Chiyu's body. After being struck by the perfect thunderstorm, it was equivalent to promoting this modification. It would be very beneficial for Chiyu's future cultivation. Brothers Chi, come in my room first. We'll plan, Tianhun said. The four of them returned to the hotel and went straight to Tianhuan's room. Take a seat, everyone. Wait for a while. As he spoke, Tianhun walked to the window and looked outside. Chiyu could faintly sense a faint energy wave from his body. Although it was not strong, it covered a wide area and covered the entire hotel. A faint white light flashed past Tianhuan's eyes. He walked back to the three of them and smiled. Seems like the situation is still good. I've checked with the searching light. This hotel is not being monitored. At least it's temporarily safe. All right, let's plan carefully. The plant soul and Jita immediately became serious. Only Chiyu leaned back on the sofa, his face revealing his usual cynical smile. It was a pity that there were no beauties here, so his perverted eyes were considered honest. Although plant soul was beautiful, Chiyu had treated her like a sister the first time he saw her. Naturally, he would not look at her impudently. Tianhun said, From the current situation, our situation is not very good. This is not a matter of strength. After all, this is the Sun Nation. Even if all the brothers of the Yellow Flame Soul are here, we can't go against a country so brazenly. First, we have to solve the problem of the Sun Nation surveillance. They have the latest satellites to monitor them. Although I'm very confident in Computer Soul, I can't guarantee that it can block the enemy's satellite signals without making a sound. Moreover, We don't have to guess to know. Currently, in the research center where Professor Guan Ping was. It was probably already filled with all kinds of surveillance and defense facilities. It would not be easy to bring him out. Jita nodded and said, it's impossible to attack them by force. There are also satellites monitoring them seamlessly. The mission this time is indeed very difficult. Once they discover us, I'm afraid the Sun Nation will respond as quickly as possible. Tian Hun said, Brother Qi, this matter is much more troublesome than we thought. Although we, the Yellow Flame Soul sect, have carried out countless difficult missions, but this was the first time he had saved someone under the surveillance of a satellite. So, I'm afraid we'll have to borrow your invisibility ability. Chiyu asked, do I have to go in alone to save that doctor? He was a little nervous. Invisibility wasn't everything. He knew that. Tian Hun shook his head and said, of course not. I want to ask Brother Qi to help me find Professor Guan Ping's exact location. If I wasn't wrong, there was a gravitational field around Professor Guan Ping's research lab. Even my spirit power was affected by the gravitational field. It was impossible to find his exact location. Therefore, we must rely on Brother Qi to enter the research institute and find the exact location of the doctor. Then, we will think of a way to rescue him. When necessary, we will use all extreme measures. Chiyu thought for a moment and said, won't there be traps in the research institute? I'm illiterate, and I don't know much about electronic technology. Tian Hun smiled and said, Brother Qi, you don't have to worry about this. With the computer soul, let alone a research institute, we can even hack into the White House's network. Before we act, we will definitely mark out all the places that you need to pay attention to and the way to pass through. We'll talk about this after the computer soul returns. Chiyu nodded and said, Brother Tian Hun, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but I'm very afraid of death. As long as I can guarantee my safety, I'm naturally willing to contribute to the country. I think you should understand what I mean. Tian Hun nodded and said, of course, you are the guardian of the East and can be said to be the greatest asset of the Yanhuang Republic. We will definitely ask for your help when we have the most confidence. Brother Qi is a straightforward person, not to mention you. As long as it's a normal person, I'm afraid that they are afraid of death. Looking at the smile on Tianhuan's face, Chiyu said, I'll listen to everything you say. Tian Hun thought for a moment and said, Brother Qi, can your invisibility technique bring people along? Bring people? Chiyu was stunned. I'm not too sure about that, but my invisibility technique has a certain limit. If the person I bring along isn't too big, it should be possible. Kiran's cloak of invisibility was very wide, and it should not be a problem for it to wrap around a petite person. Tian Hun smiled and said, then we have more confidence in our mission this time. Brother Qi, please try and see if you can bring along the plant soul. Chiyu's gaze fell on the plant soul, and he hesitated for a moment before saying, you want me to bring Sister Plant Soul along? What there's danger? I think I'd better go by myself. Tian Hun smiled, and so did Jita. Tian Hun said, Brother Qi, do you know why it's a team of the four of us this time? First of all, the mechanical soul is an expert in all kinds of machinery, and his main responsibility is to deal with all problems related to machinery. The computer soul is a computer expert, and he's the world's top hacker. As for me, I'm responsible for overall planning and investigating all situations. Speaking of which, don't you find it strange that we don't have any real combatants in this team? Chiyu looked at Jita and said, isn't he a combatant? He had seen Jita's strength before. Even now, if he did not use a special method to activate Kiran's arm, he would not be a match for Jita. Tian Hun smiled and said, of course not. I said that the mechanical soul is mainly in charge of mechanical problems. As he spoke, his gaze had already turned to the plant soul at the side. Chiyu finally understood and said hoarsely, you're not telling me that among the four of you, the plant soul is the one in charge of fighting, are you? The plant soul looked at Chiyu and could not help but smile. It was a pity that she could not speak. She did not make any sound, but her smile looked so innocent. Tian Hun nodded and said, that's right. In terms of pure combat power, the plant soul is definitely among the top 3 Yanhuang souls. If the location of the battle is in a forest, I'm afraid that other than the super strong fire esper, no one in this world is a match for her. Qiyu stared blankly at the plant soul, who was only 16 or 17 years old. He could not believe that this little girl was actually a super strong combat expert. Tianhun obviously would not lie to him, but this was too unbelievable. Jita laughed and said, "Sherbo, I remember telling you before, those who can enter the Yan Huang soul, they are all experts of their generation. When I first entered the Yan Huang soul to report, the person in charge of evaluating my combat power was the plant soul. Do you know how long I lasted? 10 seconds. It was only 10 seconds." The moment these words left his mouth, Qiyu's shock grew even greater. The way he looked at the plant soul changed. The plant soul was also smiling at him. Her hands were like butterflies flying through flowers as she made a few hand gestures. Tianhun smiled and said, "She is asking if you can bring her with you." Qiyu looked at the petite figure of the plant soul and said, "There's no need to try. There shouldn't be any problem bringing her along." At this moment, Tianhun's expression changed slightly. Her eyes flashed a few times before returning to normal. "The computer soul is here." "Oh, all right, Qiyu, we are all on the same side. I will call you by your name from now on. The ring I gave you is not only a tracking device, but it is also the latest spiritual sensing device of the Yanwang Republic. Everyone has different levels of spiritual power. At the same time, they also have different spiritual waves. As long as you know the level of our spiritual waves, you can easily find us within 100 kilometers through this ring. Because everyone's spiritual waves are different, there is no need to be afraid, even if the ring is obtained by the enemy. Later, we will accurately input our spiritual waves into your ring. From now on, you can use spiritual sensing to communicate with us directly through the ring. You can also communicate with the plant soul through spiritual power. This thing is not bad. Communicating with spiritual power can completely avoid leaking secrets. Only our own people can communicate through spiritual waves." Qiyu looked at the inconspicuous ring on his left pinky finger and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. There was a knock on the door. Tianhun smiled and said, "He is fast. Come in." The door opened, and the computer soul walked in with a big bag. There were some faint beads of sweat on his head. Fatso sweated easily. The computer soul closed the door and put the bag aside. "It's so heavy," Tianhun said. "Do you want to eat something first?" The computer soul smiled bitterly and said, "No need. I ate some biscuits at Mieyang's place. It's time for me to lose weight. It's better if I eat less." Tianhun laughed and said, "Forget it. Every time you say you want to lose weight, you gain a few kilograms. If you get any fatter, I will force you to lose weight. I guarantee you will lose a few kilograms." The computer soul shuddered. "Boss, I was wrong. I promise to eat less in the future. Don't make me force you to lose weight." Qiyu smiled and said, "Is it that scary to force you to lose weight?" The computer soul said with some fear, "Of course it's scary. If you have to run in a cotton coat on a hot summer day, don't you think it's scary?" Qiyu looked at Tianhun and stuck out his tongue. "It's scary indeed. Luckily, I'm not fat." Tianhun said, "All right, computer, how's the situation on your side?" The computer soul said, "It's not good or bad. I carefully checked the latest satellites of the Sun Nation. They are really high-tech. I tried it. If I use the latest BD-1 invented at full power, I can probably stop them for about 10 minutes. That's already the limit. As for the defense measures of the Research Institute, it's a piece of cake. Although it takes some effort to invade, it's not a big problem." Tianhun smiled and said, "I have always been at ease when you do things. Our main problem now is the enemy hiding inside the Research Institute. As long as we can safely bring Professor Guan Ping out and hide him before the satellites work again, our mission will basically be a success." Qiyu said, "If I enter the Research Institute myself, can I help Professor Guan Ping out?" Tianhuan's expression changed. Professor Guan Ping is of medium build. He's about 1.75 meters tall and weighs about 70 kilograms. Can you help him hide? However, if you go to the Research Institute alone, it will be much more dangerous. 1.75 meters? That's terrible. I can only bring a person around 1.65 meters tall, and they must have a slender figure. Otherwise, I won't be able to completely cover them." Chiyu gave a simple answer after roughly calculating the amount that the Qilin concealment could cover. Tianhun said, "Then we can only proceed with the long-term plan. Once you find Professor Guanping, you have to rush out as fast as possible. Plant Soul, this will depend on you. Remember, you have to protect Professor Guanping." The Plant Soul nodded and seemed to be in deep thought. Chiyu said, "Rush out? That doesn't seem easy. They must have weapons." Tianhun said, "Weapons aren't that scary. Those that can threaten us mainly come from the Sun Nation's Soul Eater Hall. The Soul Eater Hall supports the strongest warriors of the Sun Nation. It was established to deal with the Yellow Flame Soul Eater Hall. Unlike us, everyone in the Soul Devour Hall is a combatant, and they are very powerful. I can be sure that the people in charge of monitoring Professor Guanping are the masters from the Soul Eater Hall. They are the ones you need to pay attention to." The Computer Soul said, "I will use the computer control system in the Research Institute to guide you. Try to avoid their masters. When you find Professor Guanping, inform me immediately. I will start to destroy the satellite system. Remember, you only have 10 minutes. You must rush out within 10 minutes. Otherwise, it will be difficult." Chiyu thought about it and said, "Since you can hack into the electronic control system of the Research Institute, can you directly find Professor Guanping's specific location? If you can find him, our rescue will be much easier." Some of the brothers said that the mistress wanted to give Ming Ming away, but how could that be possible? Ming Ming's engagement was a foreshadowing. This was very obvious. The mistress didn't seem to have the habit of giving away the female lead. Chiyu would solve these problems. This foreshadowing was also an important part of the exciting plot. Everyone should read on. You will definitely be satisfied. The computer's soul smiled bitterly. "I'm not omnipotent. As everyone knows, the Sun Nation's electronic technology has always been one of the strongest countries in the world. Although our country has made great progress in electronic technology, it is still a little lacking. I can only hack into external systems. The place where Professor Guanping is located will definitely have the most sophisticated electronic protection measures. It'll take a long time to crack the encryption program. Therefore, I can only provide you with a rough location. The real operation will have to be completed by your own strength. Right now, your invisibility is your greatest advantage. It will make our operation a lot easier." Tianhun said, "Okay, that's it for now. You all go back and rest. I will carefully discuss with the computer soul and try to find the most reliable method. We will take action in 2 days." After returning to his and Jita's room, Chiyu couldn't help but feel a little nervous. After all, he used to be a ruffian. Although acting as a special agent this time was very exciting for him, he also understood that if something went wrong, he might never be able to return to the Yanhuang Republic. However, at this time, how could he retreat? "Sherbo, what are you thinking about?" Jita asked. Chiyu said unhappily, "I'm thinking about Ming Ming." Jita smiled bitterly and said, "Didn't you hear what I said? Ming Ming's marriage is already destined. Even my father can't stop it now." Chiyu snorted and said, "When Ming Ming got engaged, she wasn't the Zodiac Guardian yet. But now she is a member of the Guardian of the East. Isn't it ridiculous for the Guardian of the East to marry a Westerner? As the King of the Zodiac, I will absolutely not allow such a situation to happen." Jita was stunned and said, "Master, you can't be serious, right? Don't tell me you want it. If that's the case, you will be going against the country. If anything happens, you will be a sinner of the country." Chiyu laughed and said, "That's not necessarily true. Have you heard of the brick-breaking martial art? The barefoot is not afraid of the shoes. I naturally have my own methods. Anyway, there is still more than a year's time. I will find a way to solve it." In fact, what he was most afraid of now was that Ming Ming really fell in love with the Greek president's son. If that was the case, he had no reason to stop it. Jita said, "Let's talk about it when we meet Ming Ming." "Master, don't tell me you really fell in love with my sister." Chiyu laughed and said, "Why? Don't you want to change from my disciple to my uncle? You just said that you are very willing to let your sister be with me. Can I regret it? No. Master, you are so stupid. F*CKU. The master and disciple looked at each other and smiled. Jita helplessly looked at his master, who was almost 10 years younger than him. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. Just when Chiyu had said that he wouldn't let Mingming marry a Westerner, Jita felt a little weird. He clearly felt that Chiyu's aura had changed. Even his eyes were much sharper. As the saying goes, sharpening a spear at the last moment is not fast. For the sake of the mission in 2 days, Chiyu once again put in a lot of effort. 2 days of training naturally wouldn't have much effect, but it was better than being mentally uneasy. In the 2 days, Chiyu didn't focus on the cultivation of Thundercloud Force. Instead, he experimented several times with the application methods of Kirin's abilities in his memory. Thundercloud Force alone was naturally not enough. In this situation, it was best to apply Thundercloud Force in the most critical places. The gloomy weather gave people a somewhat depressing feeling. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and there was no wind. The weather was a little stuffy. Fortunately, it was already late autumn. Otherwise, the stuffy feeling would be even more uncomfortable. Chiyu's long hair that stood up after being struck by lightning had been smoothed out again. It was neatly combed, and he wore a set of white casual clothes. He looked a little more heroic. His appearance wasn't annoying, and with his tall figure, he could barely add a trace of handsomeness. The soft little hand in Chiyu's hand made him feel especially comfortable. The plant soul was like his little sister being held by him, with a faint smile on her pretty face. The two of them walked on the street, looking like a couple. The delicate and pretty face of the plant soul would often attract the attention of the men in the Sun Nation. After all, such a pure-looking little girl seemed to have disappeared in this country. Big Brother Chi, we're almost there. Relax. Through the mental energy transmitted by the ring, Chiyu could finally communicate with the plant soul. Unfortunately, he could only feel the other party's intentions and not make any sound. When Chiyu first used this method to communicate with the plant soul, he secretly swore that as long as he could do it, no matter the price, he would definitely help this innocent little girl regain her ability to speak and listen to her voice. I'm very relaxed. Then why are your hands so sweaty? It was impossible to say that he wasn't nervous. Chiyu couldn't help but think of something that a friend of his who was also a hoodlum had experienced. At that time, in their circle, other than hoodlums, there were only hoodlums. That hoodlum friend of his had a decent family background, so he went to get a driver's license. On the day of the exam, according to the rules, the student who got on the car should first step on the accelerator, then tell the examiner beside him that the instrument was normal and request to start. Then the examiner would agree, and the exam could start. However, Chiyu's friend was very nervous the moment he got on the car. His initial actions were not wrong. He stepped on the accelerator, and then he subconsciously said that the instrument was normal and requested to take off. The examiner was also interesting. He directly said 2 words, fly. The result could be imagined. He was so nervous that he directly ran through the red light. The examiner told him to turn left. He turned right, and when he told him to stop, he gave him gas and hung up. Now, Chi was just like his hoodlum friend when he was taking the driving test. How could he not be nervous when facing such a situation for the first time? He didn't even notice that his palms were sweaty. Brother Chi, don't be nervous. I'm here. I'll protect you, the plant soul said kindly. Chi was silent. When a man was said to like that by a girl, no matter who it was, they would feel uncomfortable. After all, he was a man. Chi lowered his head and stopped in his tracks. The plant soul was stunned. Brother Chi, what's wrong? Chi took a deep breath, raised his head again, and tightened his grip on the plant soul's little hand. I don't need your protection, sister plant soul. Trust me, as long as I'm still breathing, I won't let anything happen to you. The plant soul saw the determination in Chiyu's eyes. A faint smile appeared on her pretty face. I trust you. These 3 simple words bestowed Chiyu with immense courage. His nervousness was still present, but the sliver of fear in his heart had completely disappeared. He suddenly felt that he had given this adorable and beautiful girl a promise. And now, he was going to fulfill this promise. Yes, what was there to worry about? It was like peeking at a girl's underwear. Even if he was caught, he would at most be slapped and scolded for being a pervert. With Kirin hiding, as long as he had enough Thundercloud Force, he would be able to escape with the plant soul. If he had no other choice, he could just give up on the doctor, right? Professor Guan Ping's research institute was called the Genetics Research Institute. It was one of the most advanced research institutes in the Sun Empire. It was a special research institute that specialized in genetics and human genetics. From the outside, the research institute looked like a metal fortress. There was only one building, and there was no courtyard. The building was semicircular. According to the Sky Soul, not only did it have a gravitational field, but the main structure and the outermost layer of the research institute were made of high-tech titanium alloy. It was difficult for missiles to do any damage to it. There were 4 guards at the entrance. They were all tall and strong. To Chi Yu's amusement, they were wearing helmets and holding guns. They were watching the passers-by outside. Of course, the Genetics Research Institute had more than just a few people to protect it. The Real defense was inside. The plant soul nodded at Chi Yu. Chi Yu knew it was time to act. Just as Chi Yu was about to bring the plant soul to a secluded corner and activate Kirin's stealth, he suddenly saw someone. It was a woman in a black leather outfit. Oh, why is she here? Chi Yu stopped in shock. He saw the woman in black he met on the road the other day. She was still dressed like that day, with an ice-cold expression. However, her fiery figure still caused Chi Yu to secretly swallow a mouthful of saliva. The main reason why Chi Yu had stopped was because the woman in black was actually heading towards the Genetic Research Institute. The plant soul naturally recognized the woman in black. Chi Yu gave her a questioning look. The plant soul replied through its mind power, "We'll see later." She's not from the Research Institute, is she? Soon, they had their answer. When the woman in black arrived at the entrance of the Research Institute, she was immediately stopped by 4 armed security guards. The woman in black said something in the Sun Nation's language. The security guards' attitude was very firm. They pointed their guns at her. Perhaps it was a common problem among the Sun Nation's people. The guns were pointed at the woman's full breasts. The Genetics Research Institute was located in the eastern suburbs of the Sun Nation's capital. Compared to the bustling city, there were fewer pedestrians here. Moreover, the sign hanging outside the Research Institute clearly warned that non-employees were not allowed to enter. Just as Chi Yu was feeling puzzled, the woman in black suddenly moved. Chi Yu only saw a blur. The woman's body suddenly jumped between the 4 security guards like lightning. The 4 security guards were shocked at the same time. They subconsciously turned around and raised their guns. At that instant, the woman in black retreated like lightning. Her figure moved forward and backward. Before Chi Yu could see clearly, the 4 security guards had already fallen to the ground. Damn, is she trying to attack from the front? Chi Yu looked at the woman in black who rushed into the Research Institute in shock. The plant soul frowned. This is bad. I'm afraid we'll have to temporarily cancel our operation. If she does that, the entire Research Institute will definitely be on guard. Brother Chi, what should we do? Chi Yu chuckled and said, "There's no rush. Let's wait." As he said that, he pulled the plant soul to his side and hugged her slender waist. A dark red light flashed, and the 2 of them disappeared into thin air. Kirin to the computer. Kirin to the computer. What's the status of the surveillance system in the Research Institute? Computer received, Kirin. The surveillance system shows that a woman in black suddenly invaded the Research Institute. The Research Institute has entered a state of alert. The situation doesn't look good. Don't move yet. Wait for my notification. Understood. After communicating with his spiritual power, Chi Yu quietly walked to the door of the Research Institute with the plant soul. He was not in a hurry to go in. Brother Chi, who is that woman in black? She's too bold. Chi Yu said, "You're a yellow flame soul elite. If you don't know, how would I know? However, I saw that her eyes were blue the other day. She should be a mixed blood." Half of his spiritual power was currently focused on the plant soul. As the saying went, you wouldn't know until you hugged her. The plant soul looked very small on the surface, but when he hugged her, Chi Yu could feel that her exquisite body was full of temptation. A certain part of her body started to rise. Fortunately, the pants were not too big, and the plant soul could not see their bodies. Moreover, it was sticking to Chi Yu from the side. Otherwise, he would have made a fool of himself. With Kirin wrapped around the 2 of them, he naturally had to stick close to them. Otherwise, he would not be able to take care of her entire body. At first, the plant soul was a little stiff when it stuck to Chiyu, but she quickly recovered. After all, she had been trained for a long time. Although this situation was a little awkward, she still endured it. Chiyu's eyes were fixed on the research institute. There was a strong glint in his eyes as he hugged the plant soul and waited quietly. Just as the heavenly soul had said, his spiritual power could not sense the aura around him in this research institute. The gravitational field was very serious. If not for the high-tech ring on his hand, he might have lost contact with the heavenly soul and the rest. In the capital of the Yanhuang Republic, it's been 2 days. Why hasn't there been any news about him? Where'd he go? Hai Ryue slammed the table angrily. Fortunately, she was still rational and did not use her dragon power. Otherwise, the poor table would have been destroyed. Su Dong said helplessly, "There's nothing we can do. We've searched everywhere in the capital, but there's no trace of him. It seems like he has suffered a great shock this time. We lost Kirin. How are we going to explain this to Master Zagru?" Hai Ryue frowned, and her eyes flashed with a cold light. Mud can't help a wall. Chiyu is a bastard. He will always be a hooligan. I don't know why God chose him to become Kirin. Chapter 38. Hai Ryue deflated and sat back on the chair, her right hand supporting her forehead. "I'm sorry. I was too excited. You also know how important Qilin is to our Zodiac guardian god. I can feel that an invisible crisis is getting closer and closer to us. I just feel that he's not strong enough, such a small setback, and he's playing missing." Su Dong smiled and said, "I was right to say that you underestimated him. Perhaps he suffered a little this time, but it's definitely not a setback. Although he's a ruffian and an orphan, he might have some inferiority complex in his heart. But through contact, I can feel that he's open-minded. Now that we can't find him, I'm afraid there's another reason. Ryue, don't be anxious. Wait for a few more days." At this time, the phone suddenly rang. Hai Ryu didn't pick it up, her eyes still flashing with irritation. Su Dong gave her a look, and Hai Ryu sighed helplessly, then picked up the phone. "Who is it?" "Sister Ryu, it's me. I'm Ming Ming." A clear voice came from the other side of the phone. Hearing that it was Ming Ming, Hai Ryu suddenly sobered up a bit and said, "Ming Ming, how's the situation on your side? Did the three of them wake up smoothly?" "Quite smoothly. I'll tell you good news. Sister Modi has been cultivating since childhood, so her foundation is very good. Just after awakening, she already has the strength of 2 clouds. I think, after she cultivates for a while, she will definitely surpass me. Soon, she will be able to surpass me. Vol and Yin Xiaoi have also finished their awakening and are cultivating. We'll rush back before the start of the exchange, don't worry." Finally, it's not bad news. Hai Ryu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Ming Ming, take care of yourselves. When you come back, I'll pick you up." Ming Ming suddenly said, "Oh, right. Sister Ryue, how can you let Chiyu follow my brother to Japan? He's still so weak." "What? Chiyu went to Japan?" Hai Ryu exclaimed. Ming Ming said in a strange tone, "You don't know? I received a call from my brother yesterday, saying that they are already in the Sun Nation. He was on a mission. Chiyu went with him. My brother is a member of the Yellow Flame Soul. The Yin Huang Souls carried out the most dangerous missions. I'm afraid that Chiyu will be in danger." Hai Ryu said, "This scoundrel, with his meager abilities, he actually followed them to the Sun Nation to carry out a mission. I really want to—" There was some anxiety in Ming Ming's voice. "Elder Sister Ryu, my brother only spoke a few words with me before he hung up. Didn't you arrange for Chiyu to go? What the hell happened? Haven't you been protecting him all this time?" Even Ming Ming herself didn't know why she was so anxious. Her heart was in a mess. Hai Ryu smiled bitterly and briefly explained what had happened. After listening to her, Li Tianlan's expression changed. Ming Ming fell into silence. About 10 seconds later, her firm voice came from the other side of the phone. "Sister Ryu, I'm going back now, and then flying directly to the Sun Nation." Hai Ryue's expression stiffened. Although Ming Ming didn't say it directly, she could hear that Ming Ming was blaming her for not protecting Chiyu. "Ming Ming, you don't have to come back. Tibet still needs you to assist them in their cultivation. Su Dong and I will go to the Sun Nation immediately. Ming Ming was silent for a while. Sister Ryue, don't be prejudiced against Chiyu, okay? He's an orphan, and his life is already quite pitiful. Hi Ryue's gaze was somewhat complicated. I know. This time it's my negligence. All right, let's leave it at that. We'll immediately go to Japan and bring him back safely. Ming Ming said, then you won't blame him, right? Ryue gritted her teeth and said, it's all in the past. The most important thing now is the exchange in 2 months. On the other side of the phone, Ming Ming smiled. That's good. I've asked Master to calculate. Master is his heaven's guide and is very sensitive to his aura. Master said that it's good to let him go out and gain experience. As Kieran's auspicious sign, at most it'll be a daunting experience, but not a dangerous one. Ryue said snappily, why didn't you say that just now? Ming Ming giggled and said, I was afraid that you would blame him. Us Zodiac guardian gods are all brothers and sisters. It's best if we unite together. All right, I'll hang up now. Sister Ryue, take care of yourselves. Ming Ming, this girl is getting more and more mischievous. Ryue helplessly hung up the phone. Su Dong secretly glanced at Ryue's chest, which was rising and falling due to her emotions, and said, Ming Ming is no longer the little girl from before. She's grown up. Even Ming Ming knows to unite. How can you not know? Ryue, don't always put on a cold face, okay? Cut the crap. Go and book the plane tickets. We'll take the fastest flight to the Sun Nation. Ryue fiercely glared at Su Dong. Su Dong's eyes, which were full of emotions, could not help but remind her of the first time she saw Chiyu. F***CK. This woman is really fierce. Chiyu, don't move. She actually killed many guards inside with her bare hands. Her speed is the fastest I've ever seen. It's not something a human can achieve. I used the computer to calculate just now. When she suddenly burst out, her speed was close to subsonic. It's really scary. However, the defense system inside the research institute has been fully activated. She's trapped inside. I'm afraid it's over. Listening to Computer Soul's description, Chiyu smiled bitterly. It seems like today is really unfortunate. I know. Plant Soul's eyes suddenly lit up. Chiyu asked curiously, what do you know? Plant Soul said, that woman in black should be a metahuman from America. She must be. Chiyu wasn't the only one who could hear the Plant Soul's voice. The Heavenly Soul, Computer Soul, and Jida could also hear it. Not good. Sky Soul exclaimed. If she's from America, why would they charge head-on? If I'm not wrong, they must have other tricks up their sleeves. Their target must be Professor Guanping. Since they chose to attack, they should have some confidence. The situation is not good. Chiyu said, what do we do now? Computer Soul, if we go in now, do you have the confidence to temporarily paralyze the defense system inside? Computer Soul said, yes. However, isn't this too risky? The satellites have already locked onto the Research Institute, and the Sun Nation has already taken action. Although I intercepted some of the transfer orders, I can't guarantee that they will be completely intercepted. It's too dangerous for you to go in now. Plant Soul said, but this may be our only chance. If America intercepts him, it will be even more difficult for us to rescue Professor Guanping. Captain, give the order. Sky Soul hesitated for a moment and said, Brothers Chi, what do you think? After all, Chiyu did not belong to the Yellow Flame Soul. He naturally had to ask, in front of the Plant Soul. Although Chiyu was a little nervous, he could only grit his teeth and say, I agree with the Plant Soul's suggestion. With the people from America causing trouble, it will make this place even more chaotic. It's a good opportunity. All right, let's begin. Be careful, Computer Soul. Paralyze the defense system of the Research Institute immediately. Use your spiritual power to guide the encrypted location. Chiyu, Plant Soul, you have to be fast. Once you find Professor Guanping, inform us immediately to paralyze the satellites. Mechanical Soul, and I will support you according to plan. Chiyu exchanged glances with the Plant Soul in the Qilin shelter. The Plant Soul nodded at him, and Chiyu stretched out his arm, bringing the Plant Soul into his embrace. He secretly covered his entire body with the power of wind and cloud, making his body as light as a swallow. Together with the plant soul, he carefully entered the research lab. The inside of the research institute was like a world of steel, and all the corridors were made of metal. After the computer soul's investigation, this research institute had a total of 4 floors, and Professor Guanping should be in a special room on the east side of the 3rd floor. That was naturally the most heavily guarded place. Under the intrusion of the BD set up by the computer soul, the entire research institute had fallen into darkness. The power had been cut off, the defense system had been temporarily disrupted, and all the infrared detection networks had lost their effectiveness. Even so, Chiyu did not dare to be careless. He and the plant soul followed the route that the computer soul had told them in advance and sneaked up the stairs. Muffled bangs kept coming from upstairs. Chiyu's heart skipped a beat. He knew that this should be the sound of the woman in black fighting with the security guards in the research institute. When the two of them arrived at the 2nd floor, the muffled sounds became clearer, and there were a few screams from time to time. The plant soul said to Chiyu through its mental power, "Brother Chi, if you encounter a situation where the path is blocked, don't worry about anything. Just follow the original route and rush forward. I'll handle everything." Chiyu did not reply and only nodded. The woman in black had obviously attracted a large number of security guards in the research institute, which made it convenient for Chiyu and the plant soul to move from the 1st floor to the 3rd floor. Dense footsteps could be heard continuously. When they reached the 3rd floor, they immediately saw dozens of security guards in the same attire as the ones at the entrance of the research institute, rushing toward the 3rd floor with guns in their hands. Hugging the plant soul, Chiyu's hands felt warm. However, he could not care less about that now. He carefully mobilized the cloud power to maintain the invisibility ability of Qilin's stealth, and quietly followed the security personnel who had just passed by. When they turned a corner, Chiyu's heart suddenly became alarmed, causing him to subconsciously stop in his tracks. In the air, a distorted ray of light almost brushed past them and shot into the steel wall of the 3rd floor, producing an ear-piercing sound. The plant's soul screamed, "Be careful, it's a pulse gun." I didn't expect the Sun Nation to have the ability to use pulse guns. Don't let it hit you. No matter what part of the body is hit by the pulse gun, the pulse energy will completely destroy the body's functions. While the plant soul was talking, a few more pulses were shot from the corner. The intensity of the battle could be seen from the stray bullets. Chiyu could not help but admire the woman in black. She could fight so many security guards with pulse guns all by herself. She was indeed powerful. At that moment, Chiyu suddenly felt the plant soul in his arms heat up. He looked down in surprise and saw that the plant soul in Kirin's body had closed her eyes. A faint green light was emitted from her body. Her black hair was instantly dyed green. A delicate little hand slowly reached out from Kirin's body. A green light flashed, and a faint light shield appeared out of thin air. It immediately blocked another pulse energy. Chiyu was not happy, but alarmed. Although the plant soul had used its special ability to create this light shield, the sudden appearance of a ball of green light in this dark passageway would definitely attract the attention of the security guards. Their concealment effect would be greatly reduced. "Brother Chi, let's go," the plant soul said softly. The plant soul said softly. At this moment, there was no longer any emotion in her voice. She was extremely calm. Chiyu clenched his teeth. He hugged the plant soul and moved forward against the metal wall next to him. As soon as he turned to the other side of the tunnel suddenly lit up. It gave him a fright. He quickly brought the plant soul back to the previous spot. "Brother Chi, it's fine. It should be the backup power of the research institute. Don't worry, with the computer soul here, the defense system won't work," the plant soul quickly explained to Chiyu. It should be known that the computer soul was one of the top experts in the world of hackers. Although the defense system in the research institute was very advanced, it was very difficult to block his intrusion. Only those extremely special defense systems, or complicated programs like satellites, could make it difficult for the computer soul. After turning around the tunnel again, Chiyu saw everything in front of him clearly with the help of the light. The tunnel on the 3rd floor of the research institute was obviously much wider than the 2 floors below. The tunnel was almost 10 meters wide, and there were dozens of fully armed security guards standing at both ends. The well-trained security guards were holding pulse guns in their hands, firing in the same direction. Their clothes were obviously specially made. Although the two groups of security guard were facing each other and firing at each other, the tyrannical pulse energy would be absorbed the moment it touched their clothes. The pulse energy that Chi-Yu had seen earlier was just a fish that had escaped the net. The pulse energy shot by the two groups of security guards formed a dense pulse energy net in the 10-meter-wide tunnel. In the middle of the net was the woman in black. If the pulse energy was enough to shock Chi-Yu, the power that the woman in black displayed could only be described as terrifying. She was wearing a tight black leather jacket, and her eyes were constantly flashing with blue light. Her delicate body was like a light smoke, constantly moving in and out of the tunnel. Her speed was so fast that it was even faster than the pulse energy. No matter how dense the energy net formed by the pulse guns was, she could always find a gap to pass through. Her body did not stop at all. If it wasn't for the great improvement of Chi-Yu's eyesight after the perfect thunderstorm, he would not have been able to see her figure clearly. She was like a constantly flashing black shadow, shuttling back and forth in the pulse energy net. Once there was a gap in the pulse energy net released by the security guards, she would float in at the fastest speed. No matter how strong the special clothes of the security guards were, they were like paper in front of her. Even their bodies were easily torn apart. Chi could not tell how many people the lady in black had killed because none of the corpses on the ground were complete. The fragmented body parts were mixed with the thick stench of blood, causing one to feel nauseous. This was all discovered by Chi-Yu the moment he turned around the tunnel. And although the energy wave produced by the green light shield from the plant soul was not strong, it was still discovered by the security guards. But he was still discovered by the security guards. 8 of the security guards who had rushed into the tunnel ahead of Chi-Yu's group split up. They turned around and fired a volley of concentrated pulses of energy towards Chi-Yu and the plant soul. The plant soul shouted, "Charge!" It was strange. The pulse energy that the plant soul had described as extremely domineering disappeared as soon as it came into contact with the green light shield. Meanwhile, the green light shield continued to ripple like water, and no matter how the pulse energy bombarded it, there was no sign of it being damaged. Chi recalled what the plant soul had said. Without hesitation, he clenched his teeth and rushed forward as fast as he could with the plant soul in his arms. When Chi was 10 meters away from the security guards, he was already on the left. The plant soul struggled gently in his arms, and Chi could only feel his body tremble slightly. Then, his hands became empty, and a green figure floated out of Kirin. Streaks of sharp green light shot into the midst of the security guards like lightning. Suddenly, screams rang out. Not only did the 8 security guards who attacked them fall to the ground, it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Even more than half of the other security guards on their side had fallen. The plant soul did not stop at all. Its black eyes turned dark green. It stretched its hands forward, and 2 green vines that were 5 meters long reached out like snakes. The vines were full of spikes. With a flick of its wrists, the 2 vines went through the security guards on her side. Then, the plant soul flipped its hands, and the vines swept to both sides. The plant soul did not seem to be very powerful, and the remaining 20-odd security guards did not even have the ability to resist. The sound of bones cracking made one's teeth ache. More than 20 people collapsed on both sides of the tunnel. Chi looked at everything in front of him in shock. From the moment the plant soul attacked to the moment the security guard were taken care of, it only took 2 to 3 blinks of an eye. The plant soul's body did not stop. The vines in its hands whipped on the ground, and its slender body used the force to charge forward. Like a cannonball, it swept past the lady in black and went into the crowd of security guards on the other side. Although the plant soul was killing people, the light shield that she had released earlier was constantly moving as she moved. Every time it moved, it would accurately intercept the pulse energy that was shooting towards Chi-Yu. She was multitasking, yet she didn't make any mistakes. This made Chi-Yu feel ashamed of his own inferiority. When the plant soul swept past the lady in black, her body obviously stiffened, and her movements slowed down. When she and Chi-Yu turned around at almost the same time, The battle on the other side had already ended. Two vines as thick as a child's arm had solved all the problems. Besides the three of them, there was no one left standing on the third level of the tunnel. The plant's soul stopped on the other side of the tunnel. When she landed, she was facing the lady in black. At this time, a faint green light appeared on the plant soul's face, and the lady in black could not see her face clearly. The plant's soul could not speak. She just stood there and looked at the lady in black quietly. The lady in black instinctively took a step back and said in a low voice, "Who are you?" At this time, Chiyu had already sneaked past the lady in black and came to the side of the plant soul. He had Kieran's protection, and the lady in black could not see him. As the plant soul could not speak, Chiyu spoke on her behalf. "And who are you?" Before coming out, the sky soul had given Chiyu a voice changer. Through the voice changer, his voice was completely neutral, and it was impossible to tell whether he was a man or a woman. The lady in black looked at the plant soul warily and snorted. "Yin Huang soul, am I right?" Chiyu's heart jumped. He realized with some annoyance that he had spoken in the Yin Huang language, and the lady had immediately found out his identity. Not only was this black-clothed woman's martial prowess astonishing, but her mind was also extremely sharp. A simple probe had caused the inexperienced Yonkai to reveal a flaw. So what if I am? So what if I am not? You only have two choices now. One is to die, and the other is to leave. Chiyu is still not immune to beauties. The lady in black snorted and said, "Since I came here, I never thought of leaving empty-handed. It seems like we have the same goal. You must be the famous killer of Yin Huang soul, the Greenfield Fairy Track." Chiyu was stunned. This was the first time he had heard of this title. The plant's soul communicated in his mind. The Greenfield Fairy Track is a title given to me by other countries. Big brother, don't talk nonsense with her. Time is of the essence. Let me kill her. Chiyu said, "No, let's go in directly. She is beneficial to us here. As long as we are invisible, she will be the only target of the Research Institute security." All right. The plant soul did not say much. In a flash, it had already entered Kieran's body. Chiyu hugged her and turned back to look at the lady in black. He immediately rushed into the tunnel as fast as he could. The lady in black was shocked when she suddenly lost her target. She cried out, "Invisibility." Her body shot up like lightning, and she waved her hands in front of her full chest. At this moment, just as Chiyu turned back, he clearly saw that the lady in black's 10 fingers had black claws that were at least 10 centimeters long. With an ear-piercing whistle, 10 crisscross claw shadows filled the entire tunnel. They were aimed at Chiyu and the plant soul. Wind. It was the power of the wind. No wonder she could be so fast. Chiyu immediately recognized that the black-clothed woman's hand was a wind blade. The plant soul was about to attack, but Chiyu stopped her with his mind power. "Let me do it." Chiyu's thundercloud force wasn't very strong, but when it encountered a force of the same attribute, it was extremely powerful. However, he had a peculiar method, which was also the Kieran's special technique that he had just cultivated not too long ago. Confrontation. With a low shout, a ball of faint green light rose from Chiyu's body. Due to Kieran's concealment, this ball of green light could not be seen from the outside. The moment the wind blades that covered almost the entire tunnel touched Kieran's body trembled violently. Chiyu's wind thundercloud force instantly erupted. Naturally, he would not confront the woman in black head-on. With his wind thundercloud force, which was less than a cloud, he was clearly not a match for her. Wind Guide. This was the basic ability of the wind attribute thundercloud force. In the beginning, Kieran had used it to guide the wind attribute energy for cultivation. Later on, with the continuous research of Kieran's ancestors, this wind guide had a special effect. When the dense wind blades came into contact with Kieran's body, they were instantly assimilated by a strange energy. Although Chi used Kieran's wind thundercloud force wasn't strong, it was the purest type of wind attribute energy. In an instant, the assimilated wind thundercloud force had already fused with his wind thundercloud force. Although Chi Yu couldn't use the suddenly fused wind attribute energy, These wind blades immediately broke away from the black-clothed woman's control. With a slight turn of his body, the wind thundercloud force moved according to his will. The most ingenious part of the wind guide was the word guide. All the wind blades were guided forward by the body of Chi-Yu and the plant soul. With a flash of light, they had already entered the depths of the tunnel. If one didn't feel it carefully, it would be easy to think that the wind blades had passed through the void. Especially when Chi-Yu and the plant soul were in Kirin's stealth. It gave the black-clothed woman the feeling that they had disappeared into thin air. Without any hesitation, the black-clothed woman's body flew into the air. Her feet touched the ground, and she leaped into the depths of the tunnel like an arrow. After using the wind guide, Chi-Yu immediately hugged the plant soul and stuck to the side of the tunnel, allowing the black-clothed woman to pass in front of them. Even the computer soul couldn't detect the danger inside. Since someone was willing to be their touchstone, why not? The plant soul clearly understood Chi-Yu's intention. An almost imperceptible smile appeared on her face. She hugged Chi-Yu's waist and let him lead her quietly into the tunnel. The research facility was indeed huge. Chi-Yu didn't take a closer look at how many rooms there were on the lower 2 floors. He only heard from the computer soul that it was a place for researchers to conduct research. On the 3rd and 4th floor, there were a few large special research labs that were specially used for complex research. Although the tunnel was already lit up, it wasn't straight. They followed the black-clothed woman and took a few turns. Following the route given by the computer soul, they knew that they were getting closer and closer to where Professor Guanping was. A scream was heard. Both Chi-Yu and the plant soul were shocked. Although Chi-Yu used the thundercloud force, his speed naturally couldn't compare to the black-clothed woman's. Although the two of them were following, they were already lagging behind. The scream was obviously from the black-clothed woman. She was not weak, but she was suddenly injured. It was obvious that she had encountered an elite in the research facility. It's the Soul Eater Hall. I can feel their evil presence. The plant soul alerted Chi-Yu with its mind power. Chi-Yu nodded and said, "We have to be careful. Being invisible is our biggest advantage now." When they saw the black-clothed woman again, there were 3 more people in the passageway, 3 people completely shrouded in black. The black clothes on their bodies were different from the black-clothed woman's. They were not made of leather and looked like ordinary clothes. Moreover, even their heads were wrapped in black cloth. Only a pair of cold and gloomy eyes could be seen staring at the black-clothed woman. What shocked Chi was that the sudden appearance of the 3 black-clothed people dropped the temperature in the tunnel. The 3 black-clothed people each had a special katana of the Sun Nation on their back. However, they were empty-handed. The black-clothed woman fell to the ground. There was a bloody wound on her left shoulder. Blood kept coming out of her leather clothes. Her pretty face had become much paler. Yes, they are from the Soul Eater Hall. Judging from their attire, they should be dark-level elites of the Soul Eater Hall. The Soul Eater Hall is divided into 5 levels: Hunter, Shadow, Assassin, Dark, and Flow. There are only 2 Flow-level elites. They are the strongest in the Sun Nation. There are 4 Dark-level elites. These 2 levels are the biggest enemies of the Yellow Flame Soul Institute. Be careful. The power they use is unique to the Sun Nation. It's extremely dark and sinister. There are 3 dark-level Soul Eater guards here. No wonder there aren't many security guards in the research facility. With them here, it shows how much importance the Sun Nation places on Professor Guanping's research. Hearing the plant soul's careful explanation, Chi-Yu nodded. He didn't know why, but when he looked at the black-clothed woman, he had the urge to rush up and save her. Seeing the 3 black-clothed men in front of her, even someone as strong as the black-clothed woman couldn't help but reveal a hint of panic in her eyes. She didn't stand up, but instead slowly squatted down. Her 2 sharp claws pressed against the ground, and her pair of blue eyes constantly emitted a cold light. Chapter 39. Soul Eater, the woman in black growled. She spoke in the sun language, so Chi-Yu naturally did not understand. However, the plant soul, which could not speak, understood the sun language and translated for him through spiritual communication. "Wolf girl," the Soul Eater on the left said. Chiyu was stunned when he heard the plant soul's translation. What's wolf girl? Sister plant. The plant soul was surprised. Wolf girl is a mutant in the Western Dark World. She belongs to the category of werewolves. In the Dark World of the West, there are no ancient beasts from the East that do evil. The werewolves, vampires, and dark sorcerers. These three dark forces form the main dark forces in the West. It can be said that they're the same as the ancient beasts in the East. However, their individual strength is far inferior to the ancient beasts, but they are much more organized. These three dark forces complement each other. They each send out their strongest members to form the Dark Parliament. The Dark Parliament was made up of 10 counselors. Each clan had 3 counselors, and all of them were the strongest of the 3 clans. The extra seat was replaced every 30 years, and only the strongest of the 3 clans could sit in that seat, which was the chairman of the Dark Parliament. No matter which clan has a chairman, that clan will become the most powerful clan in the Dark Parliament for the next 30 years. This wolf girl seems to have a high status among the werewolves. No wonder she is so fast. She dares to come here alone. She is a werewolf master. Wolf girl? Oh my god, there really are werewolves. Chiyu had read some Western novels. He had some impression of vampires and werewolves. He did not expect to meet a wolf girl in the Sun Nation, and such a beautiful one at that. Although he was in danger, he could not help but fantasize. He did not know the difference between this wolf girl and ordinary women. If only, the plant soul explained to Chiyu. The wolf girl and the 3 dark level soul eater were still facing each other. Red streaks of blood gradually appeared in the wolf girl's icy blue eyes. It made her beautiful face look a little scary. The leader of the soul eaters said in a deep voice, "So, the United States has already started to make use of the dark forces like you. Very well, let's see what's so special about the she-wolf." The 3 soul eaters looked especially fearless. It was obvious that he did not take the wolf girl in black seriously. The corner of the black-clothed woman's mouth revealed a trace of disdain. How good can you be? Aren't they also living in the dark? You call yourselves soul devourers, but can you really devour the souls of Yin and Huang in your imagination? There's one thing you're wrong about. I'm not a wolf girl, but an oddity in the darkness, a leopard. As soon as he finished speaking, the woman in black's body disappeared in a flash. Because of the high speed, a series of clear afterimages appeared in the air. Her speed was several times faster than when she dealt with the security guards. Even with Chiyu's eyesight, he could not see her movements clearly. The sounds of energy colliding rang out like firecrackers, and waves of powerful energy rippled out in all directions. The 4 figures were jumping around like stars in the not-so-wide passageway. The leopard girl was actually able to fight against 3 dark-level experts of the Soul Devourer by herself. Because their speed was too fast, Chiyu was unable to tell which side had the upper hand. What a fast speed, as expected of a leopard. The plant soul exclaimed in surprise as he used his mental power to tell Chiyu. Her speed is the fastest I've ever seen. With a human body, it's almost unimaginable for her to be able to reach close to the speed of sound. Chiyu asked curiously, "Didn't you just say that the dark forces are only divided into werewolves, vampires, and dark wizards? Why did another leopard girl come out? Doesn't she belong to the Dark Council?" The plant soul shook its head and said, "No, she still belongs to the Dark Council." However, the leopard girl had her own special characteristics. She could be said to be a member of the werewolf race, but not completely. Therefore, she was not under the jurisdiction of the werewolf race, but directly under the Dark Council. She was a super expert in fighting in the Western Dark Forces. It was said that if a leopard man could cultivate to the limit, he would be able to contend against the strongest warrior in the werewolf race, the Silver Moon Wolf King. However, she probably wouldn't be able to get away with it today. The 3 dark-level soul devourers were simply too powerful. Just as the plant soul finished speaking, an even more intense explosion sounded out, and the 4 figures separated. The leopard girl returned to her original position, still half squatting, and the 3 soul devourers seemed to have never moved. The moment they stopped, the difference in strength could immediately be seen. There was not the slightest change in the bodies of the 3 soul devourers. Even their breathing was as inaudible as before, and the katana on their backs were not unsheathed. However, the leopard girl was in a much more sorry state. The leather clothes on her body were already torn in many places, revealing her white skin, causing Chiyu to uncontrollably swallow his saliva. Her originally black hair had already turned yellow, and her body was emitting a strong, killing intent. However, there was a trace of blood flowing from the corner of her mouth, and her full chest was constantly heaving up and down. So what if you're the leopard girl? In front of the strongest warriors of our Yamato nation, you're still unable to withstand a single blow. The United States can even mobilize the Dark Parliament, so they can be considered capable. However, with us here, don't even think about taking a step forward. The leader of the Soul Devourers was still looking at the leopard girl coldly, but his voice was filled with ridicule and arrogance. The leopard girl looked at them coldly and said indifferently, "You guys are indeed very strong, but how are you compared to the Yanhuang soul? Still not coming out? When I die, don't even think about having a good ending." Her last sentence was obviously directed at Chiyu and the plant soul. As she spoke with her super high speed, her body suddenly retreated, almost sticking to the wall of the corridor as she leaped backwards. The leopard girl's words were spoken in the sun language, so the three soul devourers naturally heard clearly. Previously, they were still disdainful of the leopard girl, but when they heard the three words Yanhuang soul, they flipped their wrists almost at the same time and reached behind their backs. 3 rays of cold light lit up at the same time, and 3 arcs of light slashed out at the same time, covering almost all the routes in the corridor. Chiyu only heard the plant's soul shout Beidou in his mind, and then he leaped out from Kirin. Her words were obviously directed at the leopard girl. The green light surged out like the waves of the ocean. The plant soul's eyes shot out cold light, and in the green light, the 3 light slashes instantly disappeared. The 3 soul devourers shouted at the same time, "Green field, immortal track." The leopard girl, who was originally retreating, leaped up again. She glanced at the plant soul and only said one sentence, "Common enemy." Then she leaped out. The plant soul naturally understood the leopard girl's meaning. Dozens of thorny vines shot out as if they had eyes, shooting towards the 3 soul devourers from all sorts of tricky angles. The vines were shot out in an extremely ingenious position. It separated the 2 soul devourers on the left and right from the soul devourer in the middle, allowing the leopard girl to directly pounce on the enemy in the middle without having to worry about anything else. The light of the katana crisscrossed and slashed out. Chiyu did not know what kind of energy these sparkling blade lights were. However, the power of the plant soul was clearly not something that these blade lights could deal with. The thick green vines were abnormally tough, and the blade lights could only leave deep marks on them, but were unable to cut them off. The 2 soul devourers on the left and right could only wave the katana in their hands into a ball of dazzling white light to protect their bodies. As long as the vines reached in front of them, they would immediately be repelled by the blade light. With 2 fewer enemies on her left and right, the leopard girl's advantage in speed was immediately displayed to the fullest. Her pair of sharp claws constantly brought out sharp wind blades. Because the speed at which they were moving was too fast, the wind blades seemed to be attacking the soul devourer in the middle of the corridor from all directions. The dark level soul devourer was indeed one of the best in the soul devourer hall. Facing the leopard girl's attack, although he could not keep up with her speed, the blade in his hand could always bring about a ball of black air to dissolve the wind blades. Black light lingered around him, defending against the leopard girl's attack while looking for an opportunity to counterattack. For a time, the battle entered a stalemate. Chiyu was now more and more aware of the power of the plant soul. With the leopard girl's ferocity and speed, she could only barely hold back 1 dark level soul devourer, but the plant soul was able to block 2 dark level soul devourers by itself. He still had the upper hand, as expected of a super battle expert of the Yanhuang soul. In fact, the plant soul's strength was not displayed at all here. She was able to control plants, and the more lively the natural environment, the stronger her strength would be. However, in this research institute that was like a steel fortress, she could only use her own energy and was unable to borrow the power of nature, causing her strength to be greatly reduced. Otherwise, if it was in a forest, even if it was facing 3 dark level soul devourers alone, the plant soul wouldn't have any problems. Big Brother Chi, prepare to help me. I can't borrow the power of nature here, so I'm afraid I won't be able to deal with their corrosion. The plant soul's anxious voice sounded in Chi Yu's mind, causing his heart to tighten. Right at this moment, the katanas in the hands of the 2 dark level soul devourers that were suppressed by the plant soul brought out 2 huge black streams of air at the same time. When the vines released by the plant soul came into contact with the black stream of air, an ear-piercing sound rang out. The green vines were corroded by the black, and under the softening of the tip, they were immediately cut off by the katanas. The 2 dark level soul devourers did not plan to help their companions deal with the leper girl. Instead, with the help of the black stream of air, they approached the plant soul step by step. It was obvious that they viewed the plant soul as their strongest enemy. The plant soul's delicate body turned, and countless green lights that were hard to see with the naked eye shot out, directly shooting towards the 2 soul devourers. Amidst the dense clanging sounds, the 2 soul devourers stopped in their tracks, and each spat out a mouthful of blood on their katanas. For a moment, the black light shone brightly, and actually completely swallowed the plant soul's attack. Even the vines that had been suppressing them were mostly destroyed. Bagyalu. The 2 soul devourers let out a shrill roar at the same time. The katanas in their hands paused for a moment, and then 2 black blade lights suddenly exploded, like a devil opening its mouth, pouncing towards the plant soul. The green vines set up a barrier 5 meters in front of the plant soul, blocking the attack of the blade light. However, with the corrosion of the black air, it was obvious that the vines were withering, and it looked like they were about to be unable to resist. Chi Yu's blood surged. Looking at the plant soul's pale face, he could no longer care about how weak he was. With a wave of his right hand, he kept Kirin hidden, and under the effect of the thundercloud force, he rushed to the front of the plant soul. At this moment, the vine defense broke, and the black blade light that carried an evil aura flashed. Kirin red. Chi Yu let out an angry roar as a fiery red light instantly flourished. An illusory Qilin figure appeared out of nowhere in front of him, its red scales sparkling with a translucent radiance. A scorching aura instantly caused the surrounding temperature to soar. The fiery red scaled Qilin figure forcibly blocked the black blade light attack. Strangely enough, the black light that even the plant soul could not resist melted like snow when it came into contact with the scorching red light of Kirin red. The 2 dark level soul devourers screamed at the same time, and the katanas in their hand were turned into ashes. The past month of training had not been in vain. After the 2 types of cloud force had reached the initial cloud realm, Chi Yu's usage of the Qilin Scarlet had been extended to 10 seconds. When he saw that the black blade was unable to harm him, his innate battle cells caused him to charge forward without any hesitation. With Chi Yu's strength, even a most ordinary soul devourer could easily kill him under normal circumstances, let alone a dark level soul devourer. However, with the protection of Kirin Red, Chi Yu became the nemesis of soul devourers. These soul devourers, cultivated by the Sun Nation, cultivated a special kind of evil technique. They used a special evil force to cover their bodies in order to increase their strength. The true Kirin Fire of Kirin Red was the nemesis of all evil auras. In addition to the relic beads on his wrist that could resist all evil auras, although the power of Kirin Red was not something that Chi Yu could unleash, he was able to suppress the powerful dark level soul devourers for a while. Damn it, I'm going to electrocute you to death. There was only one thought in Chi Yu's mind at this moment, and that was to protect this little girl, the plant soul, and not let anyone hurt her. Without fear in his heart, he was filled with a huge battle intent, and he immediately unleashed his strength beyond his usual level. 2 purple lightning snakes suddenly shot out, followed by a dull roar of thunder. The 2 soul devourers cried out in pain again. The black cloth on their heads exploded, and their hair stood on end. The lightning was condensed from the righteous chi of heaven and earth, and they were instantly blasted away. These two guys were really unlucky. In order to deal with the plant soul, they had used their own blood essence to activate the evil energy to launch an attack, and their vitality had been injured. After suffering the backlash of Kirin Red and the relic beads, the evil aura that they had unleashed was destroyed, and they were also affected by the backlash of Kirin's pure red yang true fire, and their combat power was at its lowest. Chi Yu's two lightning strikes came at their weakest moment, and they were severely injured before they could even react. Although Chi Yu's thundercloud force was only at the initial cloud realm, he had 9 blue sea thunder beads in his body that were formed from the blue sea thunder beads. Although the energy of these thunder beads could not be used by Chi Yu, it made the lightning energy that he had extremely pure. This sudden attack brought with it an awe-inspiring righteous chi, and under the stimulation of Kirin's king's energy, it immediately injured the two dark level soul devourers. The plant soul was stunned by the scene in front of her. Although she had guessed that Chi Yu was not weak, she never would have thought that the two soul devourers that even she could not easily deal with would be heavily injured by Chi Yu in a single exchange. The leopard girl was equally surprised. Although she had been fighting with the soul devourer in the lead, her mind was constantly paying attention to everything that was happening around her. Seeing a person appear out of thin air and actually heavily injure the two dark level soul devourers with the force of a thunderbolt. And this person was actually the young man she had met on the road that day. She couldn't help but be shocked and slowed down. Taking advantage of this moment, the black katana looked for a tricky angle to directly swing upwards, straight towards the leopard girl's throat. After all, the leopard girl was a step too slow. It was already impossible for her to dodge with her speed. Her body slightly sluggish, her upper body leaned backwards, her claws forcefully blocking the katana. With a bang, the leather sleeves on her arms instantly turned into ashes, and 6 of the sharp claws on her hands were broken. With a miserable cry, he was sent flying. The leader of the soul devourers was the strongest of the 3 dark level soul devourers. He pushed the leopard girl back with a single slash, his body sticking close to the ground as he charged forward. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of Chi Yu. The black katana did not make a single sound as it slashed towards the center of Chi Yu's shoulder and neck. And at this time, it was also at the same time that the power of the Kirin Red that Chi Yu had activated disappeared. "Be careful!" The plant's soul cried out in alarm. Actually, without needing the plant's soul to speak, Kirin's innate sharp senses had also allowed Chi Yu to discover the arrival of danger. It was a moment of life and death. Only a person's potential could be completely unleashed. The silver light instantly flourished, and the image of Kirin floated out from behind Chi Yu. Its black body, silver fur, and the black and silver horn made Ink Kirin look extremely handsome. Under the contrast of Ink Kirin's figure, the current Chi Yu was like a demon god descending from the heavens. His body crouched, and a roar of rage came from his mouth. Hearing this roar, the dark level soul devourer's movements slowed down, and an aura that he had never felt before assaulted his face. Kirin's arm broke through the sky. When Chi Yu was still a little hoodlum, other than using bricks in fights, he was best at using the sky cannon that ruffians often used in fights. What was a sky cannon? Actually, it was very simple. From the bottom up, he would punch the opponent's chin or nose with all his strength. As long as he had enough strength and the location was accurate enough, it would be enough to make the opponent lose the ability to resist. Subconsciously, Chi was most familiar with the use of the sky cannon. In the absence of a brick, he punched from the bottom up without any hesitation. At this moment, Chi Yu clearly felt the 4 types of thundercloud force in his body rushing into his right arm. The thundercloud force was compressed in an instant, and the 4 colors of light shone from his arm at the same time. The energy completely tore the clothes on Chi Yu's arm apart. At this moment, his right arm was flashing with the 4 colors of purple, blue, red, and green. It was as dazzling as a gem. The dark level soul devourer saw Chi Yu's fist coming at him. In his eyes, the speed of Chi Yu's fist was not fast. He had at least a dozen ways to change the trajectory of his sword. He could chop off the head or the arm. He could easily destroy the young man in front of him. However, at this moment, he was shocked to discover that no matter how much he activated the evil energy in his body, he could no longer change his posture. Even the blade in his hand could only find its original trajectory and slash downwards. Locke, this was the last thought in the Soul Devourer's mind. What would be the result of a fist clashing with a blade? Would his hand break? Perhaps under normal circumstances, this should be the case. However, if this punch was brought up by Kieran's strongest right arm, then the result would not be like this. Amidst the loud explosion that was enough to shake the entire research institute, the plant soul's body was sent more than 10 meters away under the protection of the green light. The leopard girl was even worse off. She was directly smashed into a distant wall by the energy shockwave. The purple, blue, red, and green lights exploded at the same time and instantly disappeared. The echo of the explosion was deafening. The plant soul was a little sluggish. The leopard girl fell to the ground in pain. They were all dumbfounded. But regardless of whether it was the plant soul or the leopard girl, they all knew that they would never forget the scene in front of them for the rest of their lives. Chiyu stood there, maintaining the posture of raising his right fist high. The clothes on his upper body had completely disappeared. Not even a piece of cloth was left behind. Under the intense collision of the energy, his bare upper body revealed his bronze-colored skin. His shoulders were wide, and his muscles were faintly rippling. On his back, the Kieran pattern's body was lifelike. The black body and silver fur were so clear, especially the four-colored auspicious clouds under Kieran's four limbs, which actually seemed to be floating. Under the contrast of the Kieran pattern, Chiyu's body looked so tall and sturdy. His raised right fist was as solid as if it was going to destroy the heavens and the earth. The black katana that had collided with Chiyu's right fist earlier remained at the tip of his fist, and even the dark-level Soul Devourer was completely frozen in place. His evil eyes emitted a light of disbelief, and his entire body was constantly being permeated by a layer of peaceful light green light. The change finally appeared. The first was the black katana. Starting from the tip of the blade, the katana actually turned into ashes, spreading from the tip of the blade to the hilt. The moment the entire katana completely disappeared, with a muffled bang, the dark-level Soul Devourer's body actually completely shattered. No flesh and blood appeared, only a cloud of black smoke and dust. The smoke and dust did not explode into the surroundings, and the moment it appeared, the Sorara bead on Chiyu's left wrist suddenly erupted with a surging green light, completely engulfing it. An expert from the Soul Devourer Hall. Just like that, he disappeared without a trace. Not even a trace was left behind. Soon after, two more balls of smoke rose. This time, it was the two heavily injured dark-level Soul Devourers. They were not destroyed, but used a special method to suddenly escape and face Chiyu. Their courage to fight to the death had completely disappeared. After all, even the Soul Devourer was not willing to die in vain. The corridor became abnormally calm. When a leopard girl crawled up from the ground, dozens of vines had already surrounded her body. The plant soul could not speak, but the cold eye she looked at the leopard girl seemed to be telling her that if she acted rashly, she would definitely regret it. The leopard girl looked deeply at Chiyu's tall back. Her eyes first revealed a trace of confusion, followed by fear. She retreated step by step, but the plant soul did not chase after her. He only controlled the vines to seal off all the paths she could take. The wind blew, and the leopard girl floated away, disappearing at the end of the corridor. Just like the Soul Devourer, she no longer had the courage to stay here. The power that Chiyu had suddenly displayed had already caused her to tremble in fear. "Big Brother Chi, how are you?" The plant soul's anxious voice sounded in Chiyu's heart. Chiyu's body trembled slightly. His right fist that was tightly clenched slowly retracted. His body seemed to be a little stiff, and a trace of blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. With the protection of the relic bead, he would naturally not be corroded by the evil energy of the Soul Devourer, but the backlash of the energy still injured his meridians. This was the second time he used the ability of the Kieran arm. At that moment, all the thundercloud force in his body seemed to have been completely drained. At the cost of all the thundercloud force, It seemed to have awakened something in his body. He did not know how strong the energy that burst out at that moment was, but the thundercloud force in his body was only left with a weak thundercloud force and water thundercloud force. The two thundercloud force of wind and fire had completely disappeared. This was the second time he used the Kirin arm compared to the first time. The feeling was much deeper. A faint understanding rose from the bottom of his heart. Although there was no time for him to carefully ponder, the clear feeling was firmly imprinted in the deepest part of his heart. Xie was right. Only by constantly cultivating and tempering could one further improve one's strength. Unfortunately, he would not be able to use the Kirin arm for a long time. He hoped that no more variables would appear. Looking back at the plant soul, a faint smile appeared on Qiyu's face. As long as your brother Qi is still alive, I will never let the enemy hurt you. Let's go. It's time for us to save people. We must find that doctor before the Sun Nation sends their troops here. The plant soul took the initiative to hold Qiyu's big hand. When she held Qiyu's warm hand, a sense of security that she had never felt before rose in her heart. Trust only needed to be conveyed through the eyes. A faint green light spread from the plant soul and covered both of them. The vigorous vitality stimulated Qiyu's body functions, and the shock that he had suffered previously was greatly reduced. The two quickened their pace and walked inside. At the same time, Qiyu contacted the computer soul through the ring on his hand. We have broken through the soul devourer hall's obstruction. What should we do now? The computer soul's voice sounded a little strange. I saw just now. You guys go in now and turn left about 50 meters away. You should be able to see a special door there. Suck the device I gave you on the door and leave the task of cracking it to me. Although it had been paralyzed, the Sky Soul, the Computer Soul, Jida, and the others had also seen the previous scene through the surveillance cameras. When the three Dark Level Soul Devourers appeared, the Sky Soul was already prepared to go with Jida to support Qiyu and the others. However, they soon saw the scene from before. The Plant Soul and the Leopard Girl were stunned. How could the three Yin Huang Soul experts on the other side not be shocked? According to the Computer Soul, Qiyu quickly found the door. The door was indeed very strange. It was made of thick gold, and there were three huge wheels on the outside. Beside the wheels was a row of password devices. There were a total of 9 of them. Forget about trying to figure out the password. Just looking at so many buttons, Qiyu was already a little dizzy. He now had a strange thought. If he could still use Kirin's arm, he didn't know if he could forcefully blast open the door. Although he was thinking this, Qiyu's movements were not slow. He had already sucked the device that the computer soul had given him before he set off, and then pulled the plant soul back a few steps and waited quietly. The mechanical soul has already set off to meet you. Now, the computer soul will begin to crack the password. I will contact you. The Sky Soul's mental wave transmitted into their minds through the ring. The plant soul replied through the spirit. Captain, please pay close attention to the changes around the research institute. Once the enemies of the Sun Nation arrive, please inform us in time. Although a lot had happened since they entered the research institute, it had only been less than 5 minutes. The Sky Soul said, You still have 5 minutes. The Sun Nation's reaction seems to be a little slow. It's probably because of the 3 Dark Level Soul Devourers, but you must be careful. The 2 Soul Devourers that escaped with ninjutsu will definitely inform the headquarters of the Soul Devourer as soon as possible. I think those 2 guys will be here soon. Even Qiyu knew that the 2 guys that the Sky Soul was talking about were the strongest people in the Soul Devourer Hall, the 2 Master-level Soul Devourers. He had already lost the ability to attack with Kirin's arm. If they really arrived, not only would he not be able to save the people, he and the Plant Soul would also die here. Qiyu squinted his eyes and looked at the door in front of him. He began to adjust the Thundercloud Force in his body. The Thundercloud Force and the Thundercloud Force could not be recovered in a day or 2. Now, he only hoped that his Thundercloud Force and Water Thundercloud Force could recover a little more with the help of the Blue Sea Thunder Orb. As long as he had enough Thundercloud Force, he could at least activate Kirin to save the lives of himself and the Plant Soul. At that moment, the device that Qiyu had placed on the door lit up. A faint red light flowed, and the 9 encryption devices emitted a red light at the same time. Unreadable numbers began to jump, and the three wheels began to spin slowly. Chi-Yu and the plant soul became nervous at the same time. Instead of saying that they still had 5 minutes, it was more accurate to say that the computer soul still had 5 minutes. After all, if the door could not be opened, the mission could not be completed. What made Chi-Yu feel slightly relieved was that although the energy contained in the blue sea thunder orb was overbearing, the lightning and water elements that it emitted subtly allowed his thundercloud force and water thundercloud force to recover very quickly. He had just reached Chu Yun's level, so he did not have much thundercloud force. In just 2 minutes, the 2 thundercloud force had recovered to about 30% of its peak state. He could barely activate Kirin's invisibility ability. Chapter 40. When Chi-Yu saw the Kirin bead, he wasn't thinking about its amplification effect, but about the other effect that Xieji had mentioned, which was also an effect that he had been using. Xieji had once said that because of the condensation of the 4 elements of energy, this Kirin bead not only had the effect of amplification, but it was also a natural storage device. There was a natural environment inside, and it could store a large number of items. The amount of storage was related to his thundercloud force. Since it was a natural environment inside, it meant that even living creatures could survive inside. Thinking of this, Chi-Yu was overjoyed. He already knew what to do when he found Guanping. 3 minutes had passed, and the numbers were still jumping rapidly. The 3 wheels were also constantly spinning, sometimes clockwise, sometimes counterclockwise, and the rattling sound was like the bell of the Grim Reaper. The plant soul's little hands were already sweating. Even as one of the masters of the yellow flame soul, she was nervous in the face of this situation. Chi-Yu squeezed her little hand and smiled. It's okay. We have to believe in the computer soul. Besides, even if I can't save you, I will definitely take you away from here. I said that as long as I'm here, I won't let you get hurt. Big brother. The plant soul only heard these 2 words in its mind, omitting Chi-Yu's surname. There was an additional emotion that was difficult to distinguish. That seemed to be what Chi-Yu longed for the most, and that was family. F***CK, this is so complicated. Damn, the little son is really strong in electronic technology. The computer soul cursed on the other side. Chi-Yu could vaguely feel that he was highly nervous. There seemed to be a bit of excitement mixed in. When the time reached the 4th minute, suddenly there was a crisp clicking sound. The 3 spinning wheels stopped at the same time, and the 9 codexes turned green at the same time. Waha! I'm a genius, it's done. Amid the cheers of the computer soul, the door in front of Chi-Yu and the plant's soul slowly opened. When Chi-Yu saw the 2-meter-thick giant door, he couldn't help but gasp. He cursed inwardly. Was there a need to be so thick? Even the shock wave of an atomic bomb might not be able to destroy this door. Time did not allow them to hesitate. The plant soul was the first to jump in, followed by Chi-Yu. Without the thundercloud force, his speed was much slower. Behind the door was a huge laboratory that covered an area of more than 1,000 square meters. As soon as he entered, Chi-Yu saw nearly 200 researchers busily working. They obviously did not know what was happening outside. Hearing the sound of the door opening, more than 400 pairs of eyes looked at him and the plant soul. Chi-Yu was taken aback. He frowned and said, "So many people. Which one is Professor Guanping?" At this moment, the plant's soul suddenly moved. More than 10 green lights floated out like lightning. Suddenly, more than 10 cries of pain were heard. More than 10 researchers on the left side clutched their throats and fell to the ground. As they fell, a person in the middle was revealed. With his extraordinary eyesight, Chi-Yu saw that the people who were killed by the plant soul were all holding weapons. However, the weapons were not pointed at them. Instead, they were pointed at the man in the middle. He had a standard Oriental appearance, a medium and well-proportioned figure, about 1.75 meters tall. Although his appearance could not be said to be handsome, he had a strong scholarly aura. He did not need to speak, nor did he need to show any expression, but he could give people a refined feeling. There was not the slightest surprise in his eyes. He used his right hand to lift his gold-rimmed glasses, smiled, and said, "You've come." Chi-Yu lowered his head to look at the plant soul. The plant soul nodded at him. Chi-Yu did not dare to hesitate. He quickly walked over. "Hello, Professor Guanping, right? We're here to rescue you." Hurry up and come with us. Guanping smiled. Fortunately, you came in time. Otherwise, I might be sent away tomorrow. Wait for me, I need to get something. As he spoke, he pressed a few buttons on the computer next to him. Although Chi Yu was not familiar with computers, he could clearly see that it was the command to format a hard disk. That's right. They must not leave anything for the Sun Nation. Professor, please hurry up. I'm afraid the people from the Sun Nation will be here soon. Chi Yu said anxiously. Guanping said, they thought that it would be enough to copy all of my information, but they didn't know that I had already arranged the information according to a special program. Without my order, they would never be able to obtain the real thing in the information. Moreover, the most important information is here. As he spoke, he pointed at his head. He rummaged around behind the computer monitor, pulled something out, and put it in his pocket. At this moment, the plant soul let out a light snort. Countless rays of light shot out from its hand, and miserable cries sounded out one after another. When Chi Yu turned around, it turned out that the researchers had already surrounded them, and a portion of them had already been shot down by the plant soul. Chi Yu naturally did not put these ordinary people in his eyes. With the plant soul, let alone 200 of them, even if there were several times more of them, what use would it be? Suddenly, with a muffled sound, the wall beside the research institute suddenly trembled. Following that, with a bang, a crack appeared, and 4 figures crawled in from the crack. Before Chi Yu could react, a short blade that flickered with an evil red light was already on Dr. Guanping's neck. Don't move, or I'll kill him first. A metallic voice rang out. Chi Yu, who had just relaxed a little, was immediately shocked. The 4 people who appeared in front of him were all dressed in black leather clothes. There were 3 men and 1 woman. The woman was the leopard lady who had disappeared earlier. Dr. Guanping did not seem to be worried about his own safety. He tilted his head and looked at the short blade on his neck. He exclaimed, the ion energy knife has actually been successfully researched. The one who restrained Dr. Guanping was a strong man who was more than 2 meters tall. From his short golden hair and blue eyes, it was obvious that he was a Westerner. He spoke English. That's right. If it wasn't for the ion energy knife, how could it have broken through the titanium alloy and come here? Kid, don't move. I know you are very strong, but as long as you make the slightest move, I will take this professor's life. As they spoke, the 4 of them stared at Chi Yu as they slowly retreated. Chi Yu finally understood. These people must be the experts sent by the United States. The leopard lady relied on her super speed to break into the research institute from the front, just to attract the attention of the security personnel and the experts from the Soul Devourer Hall. As for the other 3 guys with the ion energy knife, they were the ones who were really here to capture Guanping. This was really the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Chi Yu, what happened on your side? The people from the Sun Nation are already at the entrance of the Research Institute. The surveillance cameras could not see what was going on here. Tianhun sensed that something was wrong from Chi Yu's mental fluctuations and hurriedly asked. A cold look appeared in Chi Yu's eyes. The mission that was about to succeed was actually destroyed. He was a ruffian. How could a ruffian give up on something that was already in his hands? He pressed forward step by step. He knew very well that the other 3 experts from the United States must have heard about his strength from the leopard lady. However, they did not know that he could no longer use Kieran's arm. Thus, he was afraid. Kill him. Just kill him. It's better if no one gets it than if you get it. Kill. The last word was spoken. The last word was Chi Yu's roar. Purple electric light flowed around his hands. His eyes were fixed on the tall man who was holding Professor Guanping hostage. Don't move forward anymore. Otherwise, I'll really make a move. The tall and strong man was obviously not intimidated by Chi Yu. Although his eyes were very cautious, his hands were abnormally stable. It was obvious that he would not give up on Professor Guanping. As Chi Yu pressed forward step by step, and the plant soul followed, Chi Yu suddenly saw a strange light in Guanping's eyes. As Guanping's back was facing the 4 experts from the United States, his gaze could only be seen by Chi Yu, who was facing him. Professor Guanping's eyes lit up. His originally black eyes gradually turned yellow. He smiled at Chi Yu. Then, something that shocked everyone happened. A low roar came from Guan Ping's mouth. He suddenly raised his hands and grabbed the hair of the man behind him with one hand and the hand that was holding the ion energy blade with the other. In just an instant, Guan Ping's body had already turned around. Ugh! With another roar, the 2-meter-tall man was actually swung up by Guan Ping. His huge body crashed into his 3 companions, while the ion energy blade in his hand was in Guan Ping's hand. At this moment, Guan Ping's hair had already turned golden, and his face was emitting a layer of pale yellow light. His body seemed to have expanded, and his muscles were bulging. His white robe was torn apart, and his entire body was covered in golden fur. With a single leap, he had already arrived beside Qiyu. There was only one feeling that Guan Ping's aura gave Qiyu, and that was intimacy. The Kirin pearl on his chest lit up slightly, and Qiyu shouted without any hesitation, "Appear!" He pushed his hands forward, and 2 lightning bolts suddenly appeared. Although the intensity of the lightning was not high, the sudden appearance of the purple light was dazzling enough. The Panther Lady seemed to be the leader of the 4 people from the United States. Seeing that Guan Ping had escaped their control, Qiyu's expression changed drastically as he shouted, "Let's go!" He was the first to leap out of the crack. Lightning had a gravitational pull. If one cultivated it to a higher realm, the enemy would not be able to dodge it and could only take it head-on. Unfortunately, Qiyu did not have much thundercloud force left. He also had to take into account the fact that he had activated the invisibility ability of the Kirin Pearl. Thus, other than being dazzling, the power of his attack was very pitiful. Although he managed to hit one of the United States experts, it only caused the United States expert to pause for a moment. By then, the 4 figures had already drifted away. Qiyu looked at the golden-haired Guan Ping. "Is this the result of your research?" Guan Ping said, "Let's leave this place first before talking." At this moment, the Heavenly Soul's voice rang out again. "The enemy has already reached the 2nd level of the Research Institute. Hurry up and evacuate from there." "Qiyu, did you hear me?" Qiyu said, "We've already successfully rescued them. Evacuate immediately. Get the computer soul to start harassing the satellites. We're going out." The plant soul was afraid that there would be another accident. At this moment, she had already gotten close to Qiyu and Guan Ping. She looked at the researchers around her, who were at a loss, and then looked at Qiyu and Guan Ping. She then made a palm gesture. A cold glint flashed in Guan Ping's eyes. He nodded at the plant soul and said, "These are all the Sun Nation's elite researchers. Kill them one by one." The plant soul's pretty face became extremely cold. She nodded at the 2 of them, and countless green lights floated out of her body. Qiyu naturally did not feel any pity for the people from the Sun Nation. He looked at the crack from before and said, "Let's go from here. Doctor, take me down." Guan Ping looked at Qiyu in surprise. He clearly did not understand why Qiyu could not jump down himself. He did not know that without the thundercloud force, even if they did not die from jumping from the 3rd floor, Qiyu would lose his mobility. After the plant soul launched the attack, she grabbed Qiyu's hand without hesitation. The 3 of them rushed out of the crack as fast as they could. At this moment, dense footsteps could be heard from outside the door. When they were falling from the sky, Qiyu could not help but close his eyes. He was not afraid of strong enemies before, but now his whole body was cold. Although his fear of heights was not as strong as before, it still affected his mind. The plant soul suddenly trembled slightly. She said anxiously in her mind, "You guys go first. Those 2 guys are coming." Qiyu naturally knew who she was talking about. He quickly grabbed the plant soul and said, "No, I'm here. Guan Ping, don't be surprised and don't do anything." As he said that, Qiyu's eyes flashed, and the Kirin Suso on his body suddenly became clear. The Kirin orb on his chest shone with 4 colors at the same time. Qiyu grabbed Guan Ping's shoulder and shouted, "Withdraw." The light flashed, and Guan Ping's body disappeared into thin air. Qiyu felt his body become heavy, and the thundercloud force in his body was greatly depleted. However, he could not afford to waste any time. He hugged the plant soul's delicate body, and the dark red Kirin appeared and surrounded the 2 of them. Then, They disappeared from the courtyard of the research center. Baka, where are they? They are all dead. Put the whole city on lockdown. Some people were yelling in anger. Meanwhile, Chiyu had already sneaked out of the research center along the edge of the wall with the plant soul. His thundercloud force was overused, and it was almost unable to support Kirin Yin's invisibility ability. In times of crisis like this, Chiyu had a deeper understanding of strength. If his thundercloud force was stronger, everything would not have been so difficult. It was only a few hundred meters, but Chiyu felt like a century had passed. He did not dare to walk too fast, because he had to stop every few steps to condense thundercloud force to support Kirin Yin. Beads of sweat kept flowing down his forehead. Although the plant soul was constantly replenishing his body with energy that was full of vitality, it was not Kirin's thundercloud force after all. Finally, after seeing at least 1,000 Sun Nation soldiers going in and out of the research center and sneaking out of the research center, Chiyu breathed a sigh of relief. He had already seen the truck not far away from the research center. The truck had just been checked by the soldiers, and there were 2 people sitting in it. It was Mieyong and Jida. They were prepared and had all their documents, so they were not afraid of any search. Chiyu saw them, but they could not see Chiyu. The 2 of them were waiting anxiously. As soon as Chiyu went out, he immediately communicated with Jida through the ring and instructed him to start the truck and head toward them. At that moment, the thundercloud force in Chiyu's body had been consumed to its limit, and Kirin Yin's energy waves had begun to become unstable. As the truck approached, he was shocked to find that the energy waves in his body were becoming weaker and weaker. Kirin Yin's invisibility effect could disappear at any time. Chiyu turned around to take a look. There were at least 10 armed soldiers at the entrance of the research institute, watching the streets outside. The moment he exited his invisibility state, he would definitely be killed. Once he got out of invisibility, he would probably turn into a beehive. Even with the protection of the plant soul, he would definitely be targeted by the enemy. It would be difficult for him to escape. Although Chiyu tried his best to hold on for a little longer, the thundercloud force was limited after all. You reap what you sow. If you don't have the strength to cultivate, you can't force it at all. The thundercloud force was finally not enough to support Kirin Yin. Chiyu knew it was over. Just as he was about to ask Jida and the others to leave quickly, there was a sudden change. 2 loud bangs came from the research center, and the loud bangs immediately attracted the attention of all the Sun Nation soldiers. At the same time, Chiyu's body appeared at the same time. He did not need to maintain his invisibility anymore, so he quickly sped up and rushed directly to the truck that was coming over. He closed the door and had time to look at the source of the explosion. Why are they here? Chiyu looked at the sky above the research center in surprise. It was a cloud, and in the cloud, 2 figures were faintly discernible. They were both white figures, and a loud dragon roar shook the 9 heavens. Balls of white light constantly fell from the sky toward the research center, bombarding the outer shell of the research center like bombs. Although the titanium alloy was strong enough, it was still bombarded with huge dents. The Sun Nation soldiers kept firing at the sky, but they were all blocked by another figure using some unknown method. Outsiders could not see the 2 figures clearly, but Chiyu knew who they were. Gathering wind and clouds, other than dragon and tiger. Who else could do that? As the saying goes, the clouds follow the dragons, the wind follows the tigers, and the dragons soar and the tigers leap. The ones who had arrived were none other than the tyrant dragon, Hai Ruyue, and the perverted tiger, Sudong. Both of them had already undergone element mutation, and their tyrannical strength was not something that the ordinary soldiers below could contend against. Jida drive, Chiyu growled. He believed that with dragon and tiger's strength, the Sun Nation soldiers would not be able to stop them. The mission was completed, and leaving this place was the most important thing. When the research center left Chiyu's line of sight, he clearly saw 2 black shadows shooting toward Hai Ruyue and Sudong. However, Chiyu was too tired now, and he no longer had the mood to think about this. He took the jacket that Jida had placed at the side and covered himself. He leaned against the seat of the truck, panting heavily. The truck drove for about 10 kilometers and they arrived at a parking lot in the suburbs. There were at least 10 trucks similar to the one they were in. The four of them alighted according to the plan, and Jida hurriedly asked, "Sir, where's the doctor? Did he fail?" Chiyu, supported by Mieyang, said, "Let's talk when we get back. This is not the place to talk." Jida parked the truck at the side and saw an inconspicuous van in the warehouse next to it. Just as the four of them were about to get in, a gust of wind blew, and in a flash, two people appeared in front of them. It was Hai Ruyue and Sudong. Mieyang and the plant soul were nervous, and just as they were about to attack, Chiyu quickly stopped them. He looked at Hai Ruyue, who had a cold expression on her face, and said with a bitter smile, "I was hiding here, and you guys could still find me. I'm impressed." Hai Ruyue did not say anything. She suddenly took a step forward and punched Chiyu in the chest. Chiyu grunted, and his body flew backward, directly hitting a van. The plant soul was furious, and green vines suddenly shot out, entangling Hai Ruyue from all directions. Hai Ruyue was surprised, and her hands turned into countless claw shadows, dissolving the vines one by one. The extremely tough vines were broken by her even sharper dragon claws, and the plant soul's face turned pale. Chiyu endured the pain in his chest and shouted, "Stop fighting, we're all on the same side. Let's talk when we get back." Hai Ruyue glared at him, as if saying, "I'll deal with you when we get back." Jida stopped the angry plant soul, and Mieyang helped Chiyu up. The six of them got into the car, and before they got in, Hai Ruyue and Sudong removed their attributes. Jida started the car. As he watched the scenery on both sides of the road fly by, Chiyu's worried heart finally relaxed a little. The operation this time could only be described with one word: thrilling. "Sudong, how did you guys find me? The Sun Nation is so far away from our country, and you guys shouldn't have been able to sense my presence." Chiyu could not help but ask as soon as he relaxed. Of course, he would not ask Hai Ruyue, who had a cold expression all along, but he asked Lu Tiger, who was on good terms with him. Sudong's voice was still as soft as ever. You ran away after such a small blow? Do you know how anxious we were? Luckily Ming Ming told us that you came to the Sun Nation, or else we really wouldn't know where to find you. As for how we found you directly, that's easy. Although your Kirin can hide your presence, don't forget that you still have the Sheng Xiao Huan that Ruyue gave you. However, don't forget that you still have the Sheng Xiao Huan that Ruyue gave you. As soon as we arrived at the capital of the Sun Nation, we sensed your presence. Based on the Sheng Xiao Huan's aura, you should be in extreme danger, so we rushed over as fast as we could. Fortunately, we arrived in time and managed to lure those enemies away for you. I didn't expect the Sun Nation to have experts. Two guys in gray attacked us just now, but luckily they can't fly. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been easy for us to escape. Hearing Sudong's words, Chiyu could not help but be secretly shocked at the strength of the flow-level spirit devourers. Hai Ruyue was already a 6 clouds, and Sudong was also a 5 clouds. Even the two of them could not kill 2 flow-level spirit devourers. No wonder the yellow flame soul would treat these spirit devourers as great enemies. As Sudong spoke to Chiyu, he winked at him. Chiyu naturally understood his meaning, and helplessly said to Hai Ruyue, No. It's my fault this time. I shouldn't have come to the Sun Nation by myself. You bastard." Ruyue glared at Chiyu. "Do you know who you are? I made it very clear to you. Your existence is very important to us. You actually risked your life alone, and even carried out such a dangerous mission with the Yellow Flame Soul. If something happened, what would we do? How would we explain it to Master Zagru? Chiyu, you're good. We'll talk about it when we get back. Anyway, you're not going to school now. I think we should start special training for you." "No. Ruyue, look, can this make up for my mistakes?" Chiyu asked tentatively. He was much more relaxed now. Although Hai Ryue's face was cold, he could see some concern in her cold eyes. He could not help but regain some of his ruffian habits and began to bargain. Hai Ruyue looked at Chiyu's apologetic smile. Although she still forced herself to keep a straight face, the look in her eyes softened. After all, she had found Chiyu, and he was not in any danger. She was already very relieved. she said exasperatedly. What other contributions do you have? Chiyu chuckled. Of course there is. I'll let you know immediately. I think it's enough to make up for my mistakes. Isn't this special training just... Hi, Ryue, and Sudong looked at him curiously. Ryue said, I want to see what contributions you have. Jita drove in a big circle and returned to the Sun Nation's capital from another direction. When they returned to the studio, Tianhun was already waiting for them downstairs. Tianhun was supposed to go with Jita to support Chiyu and the others. But because Computer Soul had cracked the password and hacked in his satellite, he had used up too much of his brainpower. Moreover, they needed someone to command them, so he stayed behind. Tianhun did not see Professor Guanping, but he did not ask anything. He only looked at Hai Ryue and Su Dong in surprise. On the way back, Jita had already reported to him the general situation through the mental communicator. Everyone went upstairs under Tianhuan's lead. After activating the defense system, Tianhun said to Chiyu, Chiyu, it's been hard on you this time. If not for you, I'm afraid our mission would have been really troublesome. Where's Professor Guanping? Didn't you tell us that the mission was completed when you saved him? Chiyu chuckled and said, Of course the mission is completed. As he spoke, he used the thundercloud force that he had just gathered on the way to activate the Kirin bead. With a flash of light, Professor Guanping appeared in front of everyone out of thin air. Other than Hai Ryue and Su Dong, everyone was shocked. Even the plant soul, who had seen Chiyu put Guanping into the Kirin bead, was no exception. Tianhun was stunned for a while before he reluctantly said, The Guardian of the East really has incredible power. Guanping had already returned to his original appearance, but his upper body was naked, which looked a little strange. He looked at the Kirin bead on Chiyu's chest with a dull gaze. He wanted to say something, but he was a little hesitant. Chiyu smiled and looked at Hai Ryue. My credit is here. Watch. I used the blood of Kirin as a guide, and in the name of Kirin, I summon you. Warriors of the 12 Zodiac who guard the East, show your Zodiac signs. Chiyu raised his right hand, bit his middle finger, and flicked it into the air. A drop of blood floated out. Chiyu made a strange hand gesture, and the drop of blood suddenly floated away. A very faint red light spread out in a circle, covering a radius of 10 meters.